Hello, I'm joined with Tom. Say hello, Tom.
Hey there.
Um, he's a developer of Blade 2. And we're going to do some questions first. So I'm going to ask him some questions. He's going to answer them. If he feels like telling any stories, then he can do that as well. And then if you have any questions you want me to ask him in the chat, then you can do that as well. And that should be fun. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, g'day. I'm Tom Forsyth. I was sort of one of the graphics leads at Muckyfoot. And on Blade 2, I specifically did the Xbox graphics versions. And the PC, which we never shipped, but the PC was what we all played internally because it's much easier to develop on than give everyone consoles. So I did the PC and the Xbox graphics stuff.
That actually makes me
And
really sad that the PC version didn't get released because I love PC games and it would have been a hell of
you
a lot
know,
easier to play.
At the time, PC action games just wasn't a thing. We did Urban Chaos on PC first because I mean we didn't have any console experience, so we did Urban Chaos on PC because it's what we knew, and we shipped it on PC, and it did okay. And then I ported it to the Dreamcast, and Disky ported it to the PS1, which was agony. And they sold way better than the PC versions, even though both of them were worse, right? The PC
Yeah,
version looked much better, was much smoother, it was a much better version, but no one bought that sort of game on the PC. Half the PC players didn't even have the right joypads, right? It was all
yeah.
mouse and keyboard. And so a game like Blade 2, just from the start, the publisher says, nope, we're not interested in a PC version. They don't sell, we don't care. Um,
It's
they
a
just
shame.
wanted they just wanted PS2 and Xbox. And of course now it means that it's hard to play, right? If it was a PC game, you could still play it. But you got to chase down, a PS3 in emulation mode or something. And I have no idea how. I don't know if the Xbox version was works under backwards compatibility.
It
So,
does, but it's a very buggy. I've played it on 360 and the cutscenes don't even start. They just freeze and you have to skip them.
oh, that's
And
weird. Huh.
yeah, maybe my experience when I was talking to you about the Xbox version being different, maybe it's because of that. But I don't know. It's very different.
It could be I mean, it's the same code and it should play the same. They look different. Um, well, we can talk about that, but
Yeah.
should play the same. But it sounds like if the cutscenes don't even work, then if the cutscenes don't even work, then yeah, there's something wrong with the emulation. Oh well.
Yeah. I also need to point out that the soundtrack for Urban Chaos is also amazing. I didn't play it that much, but I do like the music in it.
Yeah, I joined Muckyfoot. I think it was about 6 months before Urban Chaos PC shipped, so I didn't really have anything to do with Urban Chaos, the PC version. I think I wrote a little software renderer for it or something, and I played it a lot. Um, so my name is in the fastest times. That's the devs. So I was basically QA for Urban
Oh, so
Chaos
you're a
PC.
speedrunner of it. Nice.
Yeah, we did some speed runs and lots of hacks. Like one of the tricks was you climb on the car and you don't have to run to the place because you know well that car is going to drive over there. So if I climb on top of the car, I get to there quicker, and then you can climb on the car and jump over the fence. So we did all sorts of silly things like that even back then. So
There is
yeah,
some
I
tricks in Urban Chaos. I haven't actually run it myself, but I do know that there is a couple of glitches you can do in that as well. But that could be something
yeah
you could
well
check
we
out in the future and have a look at that.
yeah obviously if we'd found them at the time we would have fixed them, but yeah, there's always glitches you never find. So
Yeah.
and then yeah, I spent 9 months porting Urban Chaos to the Dreamcast, and that was fun. That was my first proper like uh, dev job. So it was me coding, and it was a guy called Karl doing QA. So it was just the two of us, Obviously we're in the Muckyfoot offices, but everyone else had moved on to other projects, and it was just me and Karl doing the Dreamcast port of Urban Chaos. That was super fun. I had a blast, and that was just 9 months, just nice, known job, right? The game's finished, we got all the code. I just have to make it work on the Dreamcast. So
Yeah.
that was a good
That
job.
actually covers one of my questions I was going to ask was what was the first game that you worked on? I'm assuming it was that in some form, or did you do
Yeah,
anything
that's right.
before that?
I had like a 6 month job at Microprose between school and university.
Yeah.
And I worked with a bunch of cool devs. The Harrier team, um, Tim and Adrian, whose surnames I've forgotten. Sorry, guys. So, as an 18-year-old kid, I knew everything, obviously, because 18-year-olds know everything. But yeah, that was cool. I got to work with the Amiga there as a dev kit. But what I actually shipped at Microprose was like a slideshow preview for Microprose games. So that wasn't a game. But so yeah, Muckyfoot was my first actual shipped game, sort of technically on Urban Chaos PC, but I didn't really do much there. And then the Dreamcast version of Urban Chaos.
Nice.
And then after that, I moved to the StarTopia team. So Muckyfoot had been working on Urban Chaos and StarTopia in parallel from the start of Muckyfoot. So StarTopia was then, getting pretty good and fun and playable. And so I joined the Startopia team for the last, I think, 9 months, and I took over the graphics engine from Jan Srosky, and he sort of became more the project lead. So I did all the graphics card compatibility, which at the time was, awful. There was like 10 different graphics card manufacturers, and each had like three weirdly different graphics cards. So it was just, a huge number of graphics cards to cope with. So everybody got a very different looking version of Startopia because we almost had to tune it for each individual graphics card.
Yeah.
It's much simpler these days because we got, basically three people making graphics cards, and they're all, the difference is performance, not features. So,
Yeah.
and Startopia was so fun to work on. Again, I was only there for the last like 9 months of the dev, so I got to do the fun part rather than the agony part.
So you weren't rushed with that game. You actually got to take your time and make it the way you wanted to.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. There's always more stuff you want to do, but Startopia got a good time, a good polish. We were really happy with it. Um, we could have done more levels, but the levels we had, it was. I remember playing through it, without trying to speed run it, and I think I took like 15, 20 hours, and that's me knowing how to play the game, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, that's great. We've done a proper good game that will keep people entertained, and I'm
I
still
do
very proud of that game. It's a fun game to replay now and then.
I do have it on Steam. I think I got it for free at one point, but I've never actually played it, so I might give it a go at some point and see what it's all about. Because I'm not actually sure. I have played Urban Chaos, like I said briefly, but not Startopia.
I mean, it was the sort of the guys leading it were Guy Simmons and oh, I'm so bad at names. He was only my boss for a couple of years. Oh my
It's been a
god,
long
how,
time.
how embarrassing. Um, anyway, Gary Carr, God, um, and
Oh,
and so those two worked on Theme Hospital at Bullfrog. A lot of the Muckyfoot folks were at Bullfrog, and so what they wanted to do was Theme Hospital again because Theme Hospital was awesome. So let's do it again, except change the scenario. So put it in space, right? So from the start, Startopia is Theme Hospital in space. That's it. That's the pitch, and that's basically what we built, and it was really fun.
See, I never knew that. I knew from reading that you guys, or some of the people that worked at Muckyfoot, did Theme Hospital, and I do recall reading that some people worked on Theme Park as well. I think that's what it's called. I can't remember, but
that's right.
I didn't know
Theme
that
Park and then
StarTopia.
Theme Hospital. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know
and so
that. Go on.
yeah, so StarTopia basically was just Theme Hospital in space. That was the pitch, and then and in fact then Gary, I think, went on to do, what's it called? There's a brand new, basically, Theme Hospital, like Hospital 2.0 or something. What's it called?
Oh,
Something like that.
are you on about the one that came out a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, if you compare the credits, it's the same blokes, because like Theme Hospital was great, and we need more versions of Theme Hospital. Just more Theme Hospital. Just keep making Theme Hospital because it's great.
2-Point Hospital. That's it.
2-Point Hospital. That's the one. And I played it, and I'm like, oh, I remember this game because we've built it like 3 times now. And
It's actually
great.
funny,
Right?
because I didn't know that that was made by pretty much the same people. And Hutch T in the chat there, he bought that when it came out, and I actually watched him play it for a couple of hours. I never knew that it was made pretty much by near enough the same people that worked on Blade 2. You know, I had no idea that it was the same people.
Right. Because like, it's a great game, and we like making it. So yeah, it was.
So
cool
you didn't
to
like
see.
making Blade 2? That's what you're saying?
No. I mean, sorry. We like making Theme Hospital. I like making StarTopia, and clearly they like making Theme Hospital. They made 2-Point Hospital. So it's always fun to go on Mobygames. Mobygames is like IMDb for games, if you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's always fun going onto Mobygames and like clicking on names and see, play the Kevin Bacon game, who worked with who on what, and what did they go on to make. And yeah, so 2-Point Hospital is a perfect one. If you look at 2-Point Hospital and you look at some of the people that worked on it, you're like, oh look, it's half of Muckyfoot and it's half of Lionhead, and yeah.
Well, at least they went on to do good things again with what happened. But you make a game, you get paid. Regardless of what happens after that, it's not the end of the world, and
no, I mean, developers come and developers go, and we're all used to that. Muckyfoot lasted a couple of years, and then, but the people, or I mean, yeah, some people leave the industry, but a lot of people stay in the industry because it's what we love, it's what we know. We don't make games because like you want to be rich and famous. You'd have to be stupid to do that. You're not going to get rich and famous making games. You make games because you love making games, and on the way, somebody pays you to do it. That's why you make games. And so, yeah, you just move on to another dev and you start some more things, and then every now and again, someone will start a new studio, and they'll invite their mates, right? Because they worked with them before, and they know they're sensible and they know they're sane. And so you invite your mates, hey man, I'm setting up this new studio. You want to start, come and join me on that. And so I think that's where 2-Point Hospital came from, is that studio, was started by someone, I think it was Gary, but I don't remember. And then he, phoned up a couple of his mates and said, hey, you want to come and work on this? So that's how it happens. And there's a lot of the same people that you meet over and over again. It's very funny.
Yeah, I was always wondering how everyone who worked at Bullfrog ended up making Muckyfoot. And
I mean,
guess
exactly.
It's just a bunch of phone calls. You want to come work for me? Oh yeah, sure. And then they just do that.
Well, it was this whole Guildford game development thing, right? So for whatever reason, and it basically Bullfrog, so Bullfrog was in Guildford, and then this whole ecosystem as Bullfrog grew and then splintered, to Lionhead and Big Blue Box and Muckyfoot, and I'm forgetting a bunch of others. I've forgotten the other name I had in my head. Demis Hassabis's group, whatever they called. And all these little splinter groups, and then they all grow, and then they splinter, and people move around constantly between them, and it's all pretty like we're all friends of each other, right? All this
Yeah.
stuff about developer rivalry is it's bullshit. People like working with each other, and when someone says, "Hey, man, I want to go work on this project," it's usually very amicable, right? And people would move companies all the time. And we actually had this thing where, recruiters would ring up trying to hire you from, for some other company or something. And we had this ban on recruiters when we, so when Muckyfoot would occasionally hire a recruiter, hey, we need to find an artist, or hey, we need to find a programmer. And you specifically say, you do not recruit at other Guildford places. That's unfriendly. If I want to go hire someone else from another Guildford developer, I go down the pub with them and do it properly. We don't use recruiters within Guildford.
Yeah.
And so every now and again, one of the recruiters would screw up, and you'd get a call saying, "Hey, you want to come and work at Lionhead?" And then you'd be like, "Sorry, what's your name?" Yeah, just gonna pop your name to the Lionhead folks, and you're fired. You don't do that. You don't poach that way. You do poach, but you do it properly down the pub, right? Not via a recruiter. It was a fun little environment.
It sounds like it would have been a blast to do something like that. I mean, like, I've always had a dream of doing QA because I love breaking games. I'm not good at development. I'm not good at anything like that, but I love breaking games. And I feel like, more studios should hire speedrunners who do this stuff to actually test their games, because these are people who like playing games over and over and over again and trying to find all the stuff that they can. It would make sense.
It would totally. The thing that you got to remember is QA is a job, and it gets boring like everything else. And the worst thing about QA, remember, is by definition, the thing you're playing is rubbish because we haven't finished it yet. So you're playing this buggy, incomplete, known problems, like it looks like shit. And there's so many things you go like, oh yeah, I know the grenades don't work, so don't even try them. Oh yeah, level 3 is like we've only got the first half of it. And like, oh yeah, this level, and like half the stuff you're playing will be thrown out before we actually ship. So, and it is, it does get tedious. It is a job, and hats off to those guys because the developers don't have time to play the game because they're busy fixing the bugs. And so QA is a highly technical job because you have to be able to reproduce the bug, because again, it's like, oh yeah, once every 10 minutes this happens. Okay, that's no use to me as a developer. I can't. How am I meant to debug that? You've got to find a thing where you can repro it, reliably. And that's kind of like speedrunning, right? If you can only do it one time in 100, is that actually useful? You got to find out.
Don't even talk to me about that, because there's a glitch in Uncharted 2 that Hutch T found it. It's awful. You basically hump a rock and get launched into the distance and hope you land in another level, and it's horrible.
Right.
And you have to do it in a speedrun, and it saves up
Right.
5 minutes. So I know all about that. I would love to find a way to make something like that consistent, but I get what you're saying. The launch itself is consistent to a degree. It's just where you go is the problem. So you could probably replicate the launch and say, okay, this is how it works, fix it. But the actual skip itself, completely different story.
And during Blade, we had just an infinite number of out of map bugs, right? Where you do a thing and you somehow the collision detection, takes you through a wall, and then you fall out of the map. And
are we talking about the same thing that I found, or was this fixed?
There were infinite ones that we found and fixed, but
so are these just like running up against walls and then you'd go through it, or
and jumping at the wrong time? So I've seen, you found a few more that we obviously missed, but those are exactly the sort of bugs that we spent. So I say we, mainly Disky, Mike Diskett, who was the main gameplay programmer. But there are a whole bunch of folks. But yeah, clearly some slipped through the net and you found them, But initially, like, we had so many of those, and it was just farcical. Disky just spent like 2 months with the QA team finding these, tracking them down, fixing them, finding them, fixing them, finding things. It was really tedious, but that's what it
See,
takes
I
to
would
get
have
the game
loved
shipped.
to have done that.
Oh,
That's right up my alley.
you'd have been absolutely perfect at it. It's exactly the same skill set. Yeah. Running along, humping walls to see if you fall through the map. And yeah, that's exactly the job of QA sometimes. It's really dull.
But there is a couple of spots in Blade 2 where there's just no collision. But this happens higher up. So, like, I've never been able to get out of bounds really just by running out a wall. I get myself wedged into something or stuff like that.
Exactly.
But with some collision, there's no collision in like the top of ceilings or walls. And if you can get enough height, you can jump through the wall because it's not solid. And you'll see that a couple of times later on when I do the speed run. But it's very broken. It is probably one of the most broken games I've ever played. But it wasn't when I started. Like, I ran this game ILs for like 2, maybe 3 years before I even found like 2 skips. Now the game's completely destroyed because each skip that I found, I learned something new. Okay, so I can wedge myself into this gap. Maybe if I try wedging myself into other gaps, I can go through other walls, or jumping in certain places gets me to go through collision. Just finding different ways to do it leads to other stuff because you've got more stuff to try then, and that's how it happens in pretty much every game.
And remember that our goal is not to fix every bug. Our goal is to fix bugs that people come across accidentally that ruins their game.
Yeah,
right?
like there's none of those really. Not really. I do know that there's a bug on PS2
which is amazing
where when you throw a UV grenade down, it will end up on your back. Can you explain to me how that happens?
Oh God, no.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not. No doubt you'll use it. The UV grenade was really late and kind of hacked in, so it's not surprising. There's something weird about it.
I thank you so much for putting that in the game because it is a lifesaver. It is like it's literally cheating without cheating because it's there. That's why I run New Game Plus, because I can have the UV grenades from the start of the game instead of having to unlock them.
It's so funny. I totally forgot there was a New Game Plus mode.
Well, there isn't a New Game Plus mode. You just, obviously, once you beat the game and get enough score, you unlock weapons. And basically what I do is I then start playing from the beginning with these weapons. And obviously each level has like a preset loadout. If you finish the level with said preset loadout, it will be saved. And then you can start the level with that loadout every time. So I have every level with a preset loadout. And I just play from the start. I don't do the training level, though, in New Game Plus. But I do it in New Game. That's just a quirk that I kind of used way back when. I just didn't see the point in doing training in New Game Plus because it's training. I don't know how to play the game.
Yeah. So that beautiful tie-in. So the major way that we had to go out of bounds was jumping, right? Blade, he's an acrobatic character. He's got all these cool jumps and things like that. So they had to be in the game. And so initially we're like, oh yeah, Blade's going to be really acrobatic. And so he's going to be, jumping over, I have lots of jumping puzzles, right? So initially we had lots of jumping puzzles where you have to jump over gaps and stuff.
I don't remember any of those in the game at this point. I assume they were all removed.
Exactly. So one by one, we were like, ugh, this jumping puzzle is terrible. So we'd remove it. And then someone else would go, oh no, this jumping puzzle's terrible. And so we'd remove it. And we kept removing these awful jumping puzzles because they just weren't fun. They were just frustrating.
Now that you've said that, the only point in the game where you do that is the tutorial.
Yes! Well done.
That didn't even click. I'm like, okay. Now that you've said that, I'm like, okay, in the tutorial you jump over a gap, but you never do it again. I just realised that.
And we realised that about 2 weeks before we shipped.
Oh.
We took the final jump puzzle out and someone said, well, like, how many jump puzzles are left in the game then? And we realized the only place you have to jump is in the tutorial where it teaches you to jump. And we fucking pissed ourselves. And we're fine, whatever. 2 weeks, just ship it. It'll be fine. So,
see, I never noticed that. And I've been playing the game probably more than you or anyone else did there. So I didn't even click that on. That didn't even register to me. But then again, to be fair, I do skip large portions of the game.
Yeah,
So
no, it was amazing. Yeah, it started off with there were loads of jumping puzzles, and we just said, yeah, they're just shit, aren't they? They're just not fun. And you'd fall and you'd die, and then like, oh, they're just frustrating, right?
yeah.
So yeah, the only place you have to jump is the tutorial.
See,
So
that is amazing that I never even realized that. But I can see why you removed it, because even in the tutorial level, if you jump just slightly too early, you won't make it
yeah,
across that
it's
gap.
rubbish, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's rubbish.
I'm
So
glad you didn't remove the jump button though, because it's useful to get past vampires because they stand in your way and block you if you can't. So
right, but it leads to a lot of out of maps bugs. So we really wanted to remove it completely, and you can't. I mean, it's Blade, right? He's an acrobatic guy. You can't just remove it. It destroys the character. Just plods around otherwise.
yeah,
But yeah, that's the story of jumping in Blade. Is it started off as like a key feature of the game, and we just removed it and removed it and removed it, and now it's just like, oh, because it looks cool.
that's brilliant. I never even realized that until you just said that you started moving them one by one. I was like, hang on, there isn't any.
Yeah, yeah. What jumping puzzles? There aren't any jumping puzzles. Oh, there aren't now.
That's great. But yeah, so like,
We got I got sidetracked. What? Oh yeah. So after Blade 2, and then we did start on
I was going to ask about that if you're going to bring up Bulletproof Monk, because I was going to ask, about the
yeah,
game,
yeah,
because there isn't really much out there to do with it because it was cancelled.
right. So after Blade 2, we started on a version of that for GameCube. And we had a new guy join us, called Andy Firth, and he was good, but they decided the GameCube wasn't going anywhere, so that got cancelled. Andy Firth actually went on. He's a big name at Bungie now, so yeah, he did good things. And then we moved on to, we did a bunch of prototypes and pitched a bunch of prototypes to publishers and stuff, and we ended up with Bulletproof Monk, which take Blade, reskin it, there you go, ship that.
I would have loved that.
That's what the publishers thought, right? And we were like, you can't just do that. It's a completely different character, completely different scenarios. And the publishers are like, no, just this lovely word, just, right? Oh yeah, just reskin Blade. And you're like, no, stop. That's not how it works.
I think
Anyway,
people would have caught on if you'd done that.
no shit. Yeah, exactly. So Bulletproof Monk was it was a derivative of the graphics engine. We learned. I'm really proud of the graphics engine we did for Blade. There was a lot of cool stuff in the graphics that we did. We had like everything was streamed. The meshes, the textures, the sounds, the collision mesh stuff. And that was a lot of fancy tech at the time to fit it all in memory, and we just streamed it dynamically. And I also did a bunch of level of detail stuff on the Xbox, and Mark Rose did in the Xbox version, Blade wears a long sort of coat that's
Yeah,
almost
I
like a
was going to
cape.
bring that up, but
And
I am aware, or I have read somewhere that it was removed from not removed from the PS2 version. It was either removed or wasn't added because of the coat having physics itself, and I assume that's the
yeah,
reason why.
the PS2 just didn't have the horsepower to do the physics simulation.
Right.
And actually on the Xbox, some levels you didn't have enough performance left. So like randomly, some levels he doesn't have his coat, and it doesn't make sense in the storyline. Like,
Oh, I thought he
wait,
just removed it because he got tired of wearing it and took it off for some levels and then put it back on in the next
and then
chapter.
puts it back on. Yeah, no, it's because it tanked the frame rate on that level.
Oh, I will say the Xbox version does look very nice compared to PS2. The lighting's great. The textures on certain things look a lot better. The glass is also better. The reflections on the floor, you can see them. You can't on PS2, but I guess that's why the Xbox version is very laggy and the PS2 version really isn't.
Not really. I think there was, like you were saying, you're playing it on emulation and the cutscenes didn't work. So there's something going on there. When they shipped, they were the same speed. The thing with the Xbox, it was a much easier machine to develop for. It had more horsepower and less weird corners. Like on the Xbox, it was just me and a bit of Mark Rose. Mark Rose did some of the shadows and the coat, and it was mainly me on the Xbox engine. And meanwhile, on the PS2, we had Disky, Mark, the other Mark, whose name I've forgotten. Sorry, man.
They're going to be watching this and we're like, I can't believe you forgot my name.
I know. I can look him up. I've got the Mobygames thing open. Mark Baker and Willem de Boer and like someone else, one of the other coders did a bunch of PS2 stuff. So there were like 3.5 people on the PS2, and there was 1.5 people on the Xbox. And the Xbox looked better. It was just it was a faster machine. The dev system was easier. It was much easier to like find stuff and fix it, whereas the PS2 was just agony.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the wackiness of the PS2 was just crazy. There was so many weird stuff, but it's amazing it shipped. But it did.
I'm glad it did. It gave me a very fond childhood memory, and it's given me something to do now. So
I think the PS2 version outsold the Xbox version by like 4-1. So we knew we had to do it. It just it's not fun, but that's what you get paid to do. So.
And the PS2 version, I'm not sure if it's the fastest version to speedrun now, because there is something that you can do on Xbox that doesn't work on PS2, which I'll bring up more when I do the speedrun. But I do have a question. How does the game handle having so many enemies on the screen at one time without it lagging? Because you can just like in Blood Club, there's like hundreds of them.
Yeah, you just make everything else very simple. We from the very beginning of the project, we wanted 50 people on screen. We didn't, because this was right about when Doom 3 I think came out or something. So we went from Doom 2 where there were hundreds of enemies and Doom 3 where there was like 5. We said, yeah, we're not doing that. We want 50 people on screen at all time, or at various times. So we kept everything very simple so that we could get lots and lots of people on screen. And that was really important to the feel of the game. So that's something that was there from the start. Yeah. And in fact, so Mike Diskett was probably the main, like, not designer. We had another designer whose name I've now forgotten. Sorry. But Disky was the one that said, no, this is going to be the vision for the game. This is what I want the game to be. And he wanted Robotron. That was his, the old arcade game, Robotron. He had that as the vision. So lots of people on screen, they all gang up on you, they surround you, and you fight in all directions. And that's what he got. He looked at the film and he said, look, Blades, it's not just, one-on-one. He's fighting every direction. He's surrounded by enemies. I want that. And he took inspiration from Robotron. And again, Robotron has that 360 combat, right? You've got a stick to move yourself and a stick to attack in. And Robotron was that really innovative thing of not having a fire button. You had a joystick to say which direction you fired in. And so he said, yeah, I want to do that, but as a beat 'em up.
It's
and
great.
That means you've got to have lots of people, right? And that somehow that managed to be preserved to the end of the game. And God bless Disky for sticking to his guns then, because there was lots of early feedback of like, oh, why can't you just do a traditional beat 'em up, one
So
on one, one on two.
I never got the complaints with the combat system in it, because I think it's, like you said, it was based on something else, but for the time, something like that is very cool. Obviously, it takes away from using the right stick to move the camera, but you don't really need it, and it's pretty easy to play the game without the camera. And
yeah, I mean, it was just different, right? And people sort of like, oh, I want my combo moves and stuff. And of
yeah, but
course,
you can do combo moves in it.
you can, right, doing the timing and
Yeah,
stuff.
but that's what I see. People
really
just spam it, and I'm like, why are you doing that for? You don't play the game that way. You time the rhythm, you do combos. But I see people just mashing it, and it takes them like 10 minutes to kill one vampire, and it's like, because you're doing it wrong. And then they give it a bad review. Blows my
right,
mind.
because they want to press buttons, right? They really want to, this idea of moving the stick rather than pressing buttons, just really, some people just didn't get it. And at the time, a lot of people didn't get it.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, so we did that, and we actually got threatened with a lawsuit or something. Oh man, I've forgotten the details. But we showed it as the publishers, I forget why, but publishers show alpha versions of the game to like the platform holders to check that it's okay for the platform. So like the publisher showed an early version of the game to Sony and said like, is this fine for the PlayStation platform? And then Sony showed it to some of their internal developers, and they said, hey, we've got a patent on that or something. And they threatened to sue us because they had this patent that was vaguely related.
Is this to do with the fighting?
To do with the fighting style, yeah. There was something about the 360 fighting, and they claimed that they had a patent on this. And I never looked at the patent, but I know, it got all horrible and legal. Anyway, the thing is, Disky kept saying, no, we didn't steal your game. I stole Robotron. So if Eugene Jarvis wants to come after me, I will give him all the money in the world because I stole his game. So fuck off. And once he said that, like, that's prior art, right? So he's like, no, I stole this game, and you can't have patented it because this is the concept. So if you press too hard, like, we'll just use Robotron to invalidate your patent. So you sure you want to go to court on this? And they actually backed off and said, no, it's fine. It's so stupid patenting gameplay ideas anyway. But yeah, so it was funny. They were like, no, this is a great game concept, and it's so great that we want to stop you doing it. And meanwhile, other people are going like, I hate it. I want buttons. I want combos.
Yeah, but think of how much different the game might have been if you removed it because of this lawsuit, and then it could have been changed to something else.
It was like 3 months before ship at that point. Like, there was no way we could change the game, so it didn't matter. Like, no, mate, we haven't got time to change it into a completely different game.
Yeah, talking about the combat, obviously there is one thing that I did see a couple of articles mention as well, and that is the sword. And obviously you can only access it through the rage ability, whether it's the normal sword, the shield, or the actual strength, which makes you run faster as well and makes you kill everyone in one hit. Why wasn't it given as an actual weapon, and it was put as the rage? Like, I don't mind it that way, because I probably wouldn't use it in the speedrun anyway. But I'm just curious as to why it wasn't a normal weapon.
I was trying to remember that. I know we had lots of discussions internally, because obviously, like, not having the blade all the time, like, it's kind of goofy in the lore. But
he rarely, to be fair, he rarely uses it. Most of the time in the films, he just punches everyone.
Yeah, so there was that, and there's just like, as soon as we wanted the blade to, I say we, none of this is me. This is the game, the designers and Disky and that lot. They wanted the sword to be cool, right? You want it to be super cool when you pull that sword out.
Yeah.
And so if you just always have it, then like, why would you ever pull it out, put it away, right? And like, it doesn't make any sense in the films either, right? Like, why is he punching those guys? Just chop their heads off. What are you doing? So to sort of preserve that spirit of the film of like, when he pulls out the sword, oh, it's game time now. Oh, he's just been playing up till now, but the sword's coming out. And so we wanted that sort of feel. But yeah, as soon as you're the one controlling Blade, suddenly you've got this like, oh, why can't I have my sword now?
Well, I liked it the way it was, but I know that I read a few people complain that you couldn't get it from the get-go. But the feeling when, especially when you have the maximum rage and you pull it out, it screams Blade, and then the screen starts to go red and shaky, and you start running really fast. It's cool.
Yeah, exactly. You want, like, I'm not a game designer, but I've watched lots of other stuff on it. But they talk about these peaks and troughs. You don't want the game to be cool all the time, right? You want like, oh yeah, this is the normal gameplay, and then you want a thing where you go like, yeah, now I'm really cool or powerful, or it's a powerful boss, or you want these peaks and troughs of experience. And so that was what the sword was for. Is like, yeah, now it's a cool bit. Now we're being cool, and then we go back to normal gameplay again.
Speaking of the sword and bosses, so I did have a question about the bosses. I say bosses, I mean boss, because there's only one. Was there any more bosses planned that were cut? Because it does seem weird in a game that there's only one boss, and that's Vorpal, and it's somewhere near the end of the game, and the final level doesn't count as a boss because it doesn't have a health bar. That's the only one that has a health bar. Was there any more that were meant to happen that just never did?
Yeah, I've forgotten. I'm afraid I've forgotten. We went through so many iterations. Like the design was really difficult because we signed the deal, and I've forgotten whether it was like 12 months or 18 months we had, but both are really short times, especially for Muckyfoot, right? Urban Chaos and StarTopia both took, I think, 4 years from the start.
Oh, did they?
So yeah, and now that was the start of Muckyfoot when it was a fairly small team. So the team grew over time, but both those took a long time to develop, and the quality showed in those two. And then we're doing Blade 2, and the deal was we had to ship the game. The game had to arrive in the stores the same day the film arrived in cinemas. That was the deal. So when we signed the deal, they had a launch date for both the game and the film, and they couldn't be moved. And so I forget if it was 12 months or 18 months, but it was like, this cannot slip. So all the way through where brutally aware, like this can never be a big sprawling game. We can't have 5 different bosses. We can't have like Urban Chaos had these weird little levels where the gameplay changed sort of dramatically because it was fun. Couldn't have that in Blade 2. We didn't have the time to do that. So all the time we're just watching this clock going, oh my god, we don't have time to do anything. And so the design, and then the question was like, how closely does it adhere to the film? Because when we signed the deal, the film was at least, well, there was a draft of the film, so we could read the script, we could see the sets they planned to do, we knew roughly what the film was going to be. And so the question was, do we just do the game of the film, or do we do, no, it's Blade, but it's a different thing. It's a different episode of Blade.
The game set after the film, right?
I don't remember.
I think that's what I heard. I heard that somewhere.
It went back and forth, and in the end, I mean, fairly quickly we abandoned the idea of just going, lockstep with the film and what happened in the film, because there's lots of bits of the film that we didn't have time to do in the game, and like they were boring. Like, okay, how do we make this bit into a fun game to play? Well, we don't know. So it wasn't. We abandoned that. But then the question was, well, okay, but should we take some of the scenarios in the film, like some of the sets and stuff, put them in the game. And I think a couple did do that. And it kind of makes no sense that they're in there because then the rest of the game is not related to the film. So it was sort of inspired by the film. Anyway, the problem was, we're still with this, and so we got lots of screenshots of the film, and then there's this weird bit in the licensing where we're not allowed to use Wesley Snipes' license, his likeness, because he hasn't signed the deal for his likeness to be used in the game, only the film and promotional materials for the film. And so the only place Wesley Snipes appears in the game is on the cover of the box.
And
because that's
how did you get away with that?
Well, because that's classed as advertising for the film.
Oh, is it?
They classed the entire game as advertising for the film, and so we could use that image for the front of the box. And that's the only place Wesley Snipes appears. It's the only one that's cleared. So we had this problem. The in-game character, he's got to look like Blade, but not look like Wesley Snipes.
I mean, I think
that's quite tricky. That drove the artist
like Wesley
nuts.
Snipes a bit.
Right. And so they were like, well, that's easy. We'll make him look like Blade, the comic character. But you couldn't do that because we didn't have the rights to the comic either. So we had so it was this goofy thing where he has to look like Blade as Blade appears in, the first film, but he can't look too much like Wesley Snipes. But Blade in the first one is Wesley Snipes. How do you what? Anyway, so this was the artists going back and forth with the publisher and the rights holders, trying to figure out how to make Blade look like Blade, but not Wesley Snipes. So that drove them nuts. That was just farcical. Like, whatever, guys.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, there's the movie trailer in the game too that plays at the start when you boot it up.
Right, but that's a movie trailer, right? That's advertising the movie. So
yeah,
it was so goofy. So goofy. Anyway, they finally found a version of Blade that everyone was happy with, and that was fine. I think he doesn't have a mustache or something. I forget the details, but there was some key thing that made sure, no, this is not Wesley Snipes. This is Blade.
Even though he's wearing the exact same clothes that Wesley Snipes wears, just as long as his face doesn't look like it, then that's fine.
It was something like that. I forget the detail. It was just everyone was pulling their hair out over this. It's ridiculous. So
it turned out looking well. It looks good.
Yeah, well, we had this other problem, which is, all right, so Wesley Snipes, he's a really black dude, and he's got black hair, and he's wearing black shades and black leather. And in the film, this looks cool because it's just this blur of black and blood and, the light glinting off the sword and stuff like that. And so you put that in the game, and the problem is you can't see what you're doing, right? Because it's just this black blob. Because the Xbox and the PS2 just can't do all the cool film lighting stuff. So the artists, recreated the look of the film, and it looks cool, but it's unplayable because you can't tell what you're doing. You can't tell what weapon you got out. You can't tell which direction you're facing. You can't see a thing. So we had to sort of brighten everything up so you can actually see what you're doing. So he wears this grey.
Look more blue. Like the clothes look more blue than black.
Exactly. So it's blue and grey, not black, because otherwise you just can't see anything. And also, of course, vampires don't, go in the sunlight. So the levels. How do we light the level?
Yeah.
These really cool, gothic vampire people, they like their office buildings to be lit like a disco, because then you can actually see what you're doing in the game. And so that's some of the visual weirdness and why it looks like the Village People or something, because otherwise, so you had to have all these weird lights everywhere, and you had to dress them in weird clothes rather than dark brooding vampires. if you do it that way, it's just a bunch of black blobs moving around on the screen, and you're like, I have no idea what anyone's doing. So yeah, they're very flamboyant vampires. So you can actually
Is
see
that
them.
why some of the clothes that were kind of cut from the game, or a lot? I'm pretty sure I saw someone wearing like something that looked like some disco clothes. I don't know what it was. It looked like a disco ball, but just wrapped around someone. That was in a screenshot
Yeah,
I saw.
yeah. I mean, there was a lot more, dark gothic stuff originally, and it just looks terrible in a game because they just turn into a black blob. You're like, oh, there's no point to that. So they're a lot brighter. Of course, there is the actual disco level, but yeah, even their officers, flamboyantly lit, and they're all wearing amazing clothes with amazing silhouettes, um, just so you can see what's going on. Because
Well,
otherwise, it's just
Out of Bounds
plod
is
through a
fun because you can't see
yeah,
him at all most of the time. It's just
yeah,
black,
yeah.
and
There's
all you can see is like the little grey indents in his clothes, like for where his buckles are, and that's all you can see.
there's no lights nearby you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you just can't see him other than
well,
that.
that's not our fault. That's your fault for breaking the game, mate. Stop that.
You could have put lights out of bounds so I could see where I was going. There was actually a couple
Sorry.
of places that I found exploring out of bounds that looked like they were cut from the game, like in the subway level. It There's like a white big room that looks like it was like a train station that just wasn't used.
Yeah, could have been. Could have been.
Delete it, saves memory. Why is it there?
Well, that's actually the cool thing. Uh, we did this streaming system, so we kind of didn't need to be too aggressive on that, right?
Oh,
If
is that
you
why
never
when you
went
jump out of bounds, the levels kind of just like pop in and they're not always there because they're streaming in?
right, right, because
Okay.
we had this system of visibility. So if you're in a room, it would look to see what other rooms were visible, and then it'd load them off disk just in time. So it looks to see what rooms you can currently see and make sure they're in the memory. And then it sort of peeks around the corner to see, well, what's the next room that's going to be visible? Okay, make sure, try and load that off disk, right? Because these are spinning disks, right? It can take like a second to load something off disk from when you need it to when it actually arrives in memory.
Yeah.
So it would do this it sort of look around corners and see what it needed to load. So yeah, if there was an area of the map that you just couldn't get to, that you could never see, I mean, it took up disk space, but we never loaded it. So we uh, some games, right at the end, they have to really spend time pruning out all that crap that they put in and never actually used. And in our case, we didn't really have to do that because we weren't low on disk space, fortunately.
Yeah.
With StarTopia, oh my god, we were so low on disk space on StarTopia. Um, and same with Urban Chaos. But but Blade, I don't remember us having to aggressively cull stuff because it didn't affect performance. It didn't affect how much memory the stuff used. It just sat on disk and like, it's on disk. It's fine. We're good enough disk space. Same with the
It's,
music. Yeah, you mentioned there was a track of music that apparently
there's a
never got
couple
used, but
actually that never got
yeah,
used, and I think some of
and
them are
that's
pretty cool, and they just
yeah,
never.
and that's normal, and some of them are pretty cool. It's just you don't find a place in the game where they fit, um, and yeah, because we never did that culling phase where we go, oh, do we absolutely need this or can we throw it away? Yeah, that's how they ended up on disc, and I think it's cool that you found those. That's really cool. Martin Oliver was a really talented guy. He he produced so much more music than we could use, um, and it's a shame, and like he couldn't then publish it because it was part of the deal. So it's cool that you found it. Yeah, I'm really
Well,
happy about
if
that.
you want to listen to it, I used the specific song that I'm referring to in the intro of this stream. So the 10 minutes where we sat there waiting, it's there. If you wanted to listen to it,
Oh,
then you can
right,
listen
right,
to
right.
it then.
Neat, neat. yeah, I don't know. I forget what happened, where Martin Oliver is now, but yeah, he'll be chuffed to know that you found his tunes and like them.
Pretty good. I mean, like I know that some of the music did reuse some sound bites from the films, and that's good. Like I think the vampire song, there's a line from the film in that song. But they're all good,
Right.
and I don't think I've seen anyone who dislikes the soundtrack for this game. Most people dig it. They think it's cool,
Yeah,
and
no, Martin Oliver's really he's a really talented bloke. Yeah, and I mean, I have the Startopia theme, soundtrack in my, rotation, and whenever a track comes on, I'm like, oh god, I remember this. Oh, it just brings back wonderful memories of working on the game and stuff like that. So
yeah.
yeah, it's real that his music is really evocative, and I've listened to other stuff he's done. It's just there's a style to it. I really like it. Yeah.
So I know you said that you didn't really like the development of this game. You said it was painful. But is there anything that you actually did like when you worked on it? But like what you are the proud of, or you think's really cool?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, this game is really hot and cold for me, right? The
Yeah,
gameplay, I just, it's so painful with the gameplay because we had so little time. And the thing that makes gameplay good is iteration and polish. And there's no like shortcuts. You just have to try this. Does it play good? Yes. Good. Do that some more. Does it play good? No. Take it out. Try something else. And it doesn't matter how good a coder you are, how good a designer you are. It just takes time and giving it to QA and saying, is this fun to play, or is it, does it piss you off? And we just didn't have that time to make the gameplay as good as it could have been. So that part of it is very painful, that lack of time that we had.
yeah,
On the other hand, I'm really proud of the graphics system that we did and the way. I mean, we'd never done a PS2 game, we'd never done an Xbox game. These were brand new machines. They had bugs, they had all sorts of things, and the way we managed to make them work pretty well. Like, it's not the best Xbox game out there or the best PS2. It's certainly not the best PS2 game out there, but they're pretty good. Like, for such a short development span, and a bunch of folks that had never seen these things before, I'm really proud of what we made those machines do. And we used that tech for all the successive games, the Bulletproof Monk prototype and the other prototypes we did. So it was very successful in terms of graphics. And I wrote a lot of papers about it. I learned a lot of stuff. And we did some really good tech there. So I was really happy with that. Now it's easy because it's a known thing, right? You have to render these scenes and just render them better, right? So
yeah.
it's much easier than gameplay, where when you start coding gameplay, you don't know, like, is this gameplay going to survive it to the final thing? You don't know because it hasn't been tested. Whereas graphics, like, well, look, it puts the right thing on the screen, so that's good.
Seems a lot easier.
It's a much easier task in that sense. So yeah, really proud of the engine. Um, but yeah, it's just frustrating because we didn't get to polish it and we didn't get to make it a properly rounded game like we would have liked to with Urban Chaos and Startopia.
Do
But
you feel
that's
like that was the downfall of this game specifically? Is just the lack of time you had to work on it? Like it's in theory, a lot of people say they like to blame the developers, but in essence, it's not your fault. It would be the publisher's fault for not giving you enough time to work on it.
I mean, this one was easy, right? We had to ship. We had a date. Everybody knew when we signed that you know I forget if it was 12 months or 18 months, but we knew when we signed that this was not going to be a good game. Everybody knew this is not enough time to make a good game. It will be a competent game. It will sell the film well. And that's how the publishers viewed it, right? They viewed it as it's a good film tie-in. Doesn't need to be a good game. It needs to be a good film tie-in, right? And this was
Yeah.
still the days when a film tie, and like loads of developers did film tie-ins, and they just weren't, expectations were low, right? Every
I
time a
love
reviewer
film
would get a
tie-in
film,
games. They're like my favorite types of games
it,
because they're always interesting to play. Especially for
right?
films that you
Because
like.
yeah, but they're not. They're frequently, janky and sort of small games because yeah, you got to ship with the film. Um, and the funny thing about this was, um, we had like 6 months left of the development or something,
Yeah.
and they said, "Hey, we want to. Hey, the film's actually it's done. It's in the can. So we want to release the film early. We want to release the film 3 months early. Is that cool by you guys?" And we're like, "Sorry, we've got 6 months left of this development, and you want to chop that down to 3 months? No, that's impossible. That is impossible. Also, it's not in the contract, so no." And they were like, "Oh, please, we really want to do the film early, and we want to be, what they call day and date, right? We really want them to ship on the same day." And we're like, "Yeah, and I want a bloody horse, but I'm not going to get one." No, you can't. You can't move the schedule up by 3 months. That's not how it works. Sorry, we're going to have to be dicks about this and point at the contract and see that date in the contract. It's that date, and I think we did actually hit that date that we promised to hit. We might have been like a week late or something. I don't remember, but we hit that date, um, and and yeah, so they're a bit miffed that the two were out of sync. But like the film guys were, because the film guys were done by a different company. The film was a different production company, of course. Yeah. They make films, not games.
Yeah.
And so they weren't going to move the film. Or they wanted to move the film, and they weren't going to hold back for some shitty little video game. And we couldn't move it earlier, just to tie in with the film. It wasn't our problem, and so they did launch at different times. But yeah, we finished that game when we said we would, and honestly, I think we achieved a higher quality than everyone expected. But yeah, it's still, it's
Well, I know a handful of people who like this game. Um, and there's a
you know
couple
it,
of other people that speedrun it too who like it as much as I do. They don't speedrun it now as much as I do, but they still like the game and grew up with it as a kid. And do you feel like if you had have released the game on the day that they wanted you to, if it would have sold better? Or do you think it didn't matter?
it's so hard to know. I'll tell you one thing about the release date that I do remember, which was that sticking to our guns actually worked better, but in a roundabout way. So, back when we had these things called game stores, you'd,
Yeah.
use your feet and walk into them and buy a physical thing, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have this digital distribution, certainly not for console games back then. So you actually had to go to a store, pick a game off the shelf, and so they always had these, number one selling, number two selling, number three. They'd have like the top 10 selling games listed in the store. So obviously that's what you'd look at first. So the secret is those had nothing to do with sales. Those were bought by the publisher in advance. So was it Activision that did Blade 2?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, anyway. They had pre-bought the number one slot in like the biggest chain of shops for another game. I forget which game it was, but they'd pre-bought the number one best-selling slot. So they'd paid for that slot, and then the game that they wanted to put there slipped by like 3 months. So they had all these number one selling slots in the shops, and the top game they had, it wasn't the game they wanted because that hadn't been finished, but we were there, and so we got that number one selling slot for like 3 months, even though we were definitely not the number one selling game, and like that wasn't the deal. But we got massive accidental promotion by the publisher, for Blade 2, Now, did that increase sales? I assume it did. It got it in front of more faces, more eyes. And so, yeah, if we'd somehow managed to ship 3 months earlier, that wouldn't have happened, and we probably wouldn't have sold as much.
That's a good
Now, in
point.
the end, it didn't matter to Muckyfoot because I don't think what you have is the publisher pays you up front a certain amount of money, and then there's what they call a recoup. So on every copy, you'll get whatever percentage it is. Let's say it's 20%, right? So, but the initially that 20%, your share of 20, the developer's share of that game, that goes to paying off the advance that they already paid you for the development cost, right?
Yeah.
And so that's called recouping the costs. And then it's only if you sell more than that that the developer actually starts to get proper royalties. And we never got to that point. We never got royalties on that game. So if it sells 0, or if it sells up to the point at which you start getting royalties, the developer still gets the same. It got the upfront money to develop the game, and thanks very much. See you later. So we never got into the royalty phase. It's very rare for royalties to happen. Certainly for film licenses, almost never happens. So yeah, it's in the contract that you get whatever percent of the game, but it's very academic because you're never going to get that. The money you can count on is the upfront money. So in a sense, Muckyfoot didn't care how much it sold. Except in that, of course, it reflects on, if it's a good game, it reflects on Muckyfoot well, and we can sign some better deals with other publishers. And so the sales of Blade 2, the actual sales of Blade 2 didn't matter to us at all, except in a sort of kudos way.
Well, it ultimately led to what happened, but do you feel like that was because of the game itself and what other people saw of it? Because I don't know, obviously it couldn't have been anything to do with sales, or did that have an impact on it?
It's hard to know, right? We went and pitched other games to other publishers. It's always a hard thing. It's when a developer dies is in between things, and so yeah, we signed with someone for Bulletproof Monk, and then midway through that they cancelled the project, and then we struggled on a bit more, doing other pitches to other publishers, and just nothing stuck. And eventually Muckyfoot said, we can't pay people anymore. And kudos to the directors. They played us absolutely square. They said, guys, we have, we paid your last month's salary. Unless we get this deal, we can't pay you next month's salary. And so, the place is close to closing. They didn't want to go into a thing where, you just keep the company going and not able to pay your staff just because you want to keep the company going. They knew, no, what you do at that stage is you fold the company and you let everybody find jobs elsewhere. Because I think everybody did find jobs elsewhere. Like so many of Muckyfoot people just went on to other developers.
They probably went on to do better things than, not to say that they couldn't have done good things with that, but they went on to do some pretty good things. Some of
right.
them.
For most of us, it was not a personal catastrophe because, yeah, a lot of us, walked into other jobs. Now, not all, there were, I think there were 40 people at Muckyfoot at the end, and I haven't kept track of all of them. I'm sorry, guys, but, an awful lot of them walked into jobs at other developers because, you've shipped, 3-4 games, depending on how you count it. You can get that job. And Blade 2 was not a black mark on anyone because it's a film tie-in, right? And it was a workable, it functioned as a game. It shipped on time. It was reliable. It was fun. no one expects Film Tines to be amazing games.
Yeah.
And it's what it was meant to do, and it was reliable. And that's a lot of people. So yeah, trying to keep Muckyfoot around longer than it was financially viable. The developer, the directors correctly, didn't wind us up, didn't string us along. Oh yeah, we'll pay you next month. None of that. It was, guys, we can't get a deal. We just can't get a deal. And if we can't get a deal, we should close the shop and let you all go find jobs where people can pay you.
Yeah.
And that's the right thing to do. And especially in the Guildford area where, yeah, half of us don't even have to change our commute, right? We, we go to the dev shop, 3 blocks over. So
Isn't Supermassive Games based in Guildford as well, or is that Rebellion? I think one of the two. I don't remember which one. I know one of those is.
I moved to the States 15 years ago, so I've totally lost track of who's in Guildford now and stuff like that. So yeah, sorry.
Well, when I pursued this idea of doing this stream, I always had the thing in the back of my mind that this may not be a subject that people want to talk about because of what happened. But from what you've said, maybe for some it might be a sore subject, but it seems like from what you've said, for most it's not. Especially, I assume it's not for you. I mean, it was painful, like you said, but I assume it wasn't like awful.
It wasn't. I mean, it's always sad to have a company fold and say goodbye to all your mates. And, you look at the stuff you're working on and you're like, that code base, those techniques, I can't use those anymore because they, belong to the creditors or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to find a new family. But when the company folded, everyone liked everyone. Everyone understood why the company had folded. And it was no one's fault. It's just one of those things. And it's the life cycle of developers. And particularly in the Guildford area, a lot of people at Muckyfoot had that happen at other companies. And it's just what happens to companies. Development companies come and go. It's just the way it works. It depends on, what publishers are hiring and what publishers want. And like it was very frustrating because we'd keep pitching interesting and strange development games, and people would say, "Oh yeah, but you guys do beat 'em ups, so you have no experience in this game genre." We're like, "What are you talking about? We did StarTopia. That's not a beat 'em up." Or we'd try and do a beat 'em up, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, but you guys don't know how to do beat 'em ups." And you're like, "We did Urban Chaos and Blade." Like the sort of, are you an expert in the genre? It's kind of rubbish, right? An artist is an artist, a coder is a coder, graphics are graphics, sound to sound.
Yeah.
And we as a company had proved we can do any genre we like. Like Urban Chaos was like 3 different genres in one game, for God's sake. So it was very annoying to be sort of stereotyped by publishers like that, especially as they'd stereotype us. They'd be like, "Oh, but we're after this game," and you're like, "Yeah, we shipped one of those," and they're like, "Oh yeah, but that was 3 years ago." It's not like we forgot. Anyway, that's just normal industry. It happens. You just got to roll with it. You can't get upset about that stuff because that's just how the industry works. So yeah, it's a shame Muckyfoot split up. And I miss working with those guys. It was, it was formative for me, right? That's how I learned to be a proper game dev, not just a hobby coder.
Yeah.
And so I always, I wouldn't say I miss those times. I remember them fondly. Even Blade, which was frustrating a lot. Even the time after Blade, like Muckyfoot was around for, what was it, a year after Blade. Doing prototypes, doing Bulletproof Monk. And I even remember those, even though none of that shipped, even though it was very difficult to, because the target kept moving and we kept changing, the pitch to different publishers and stuff. I still remember it well because we as a team, we worked together and we overcome a bunch of challenges and we learned a bunch of stuff. And then it ended. And, you know, you could say like, oh, it's sad it was ending. It ended. But then I look at the job I went on to, right? After that, I moved to the States and I got a job at Rad Game Tools doing animation middleware. And they paid me a fantastic amount of money compared to the Muckyfoot job. Just crazy amounts of money compared to Muckyfoot, which it's not like Muckyfoot didn't pay us. It's just developers in the UK don't get paid very much. And if you move to the US, you get paid a huge amount more. And so if Muckyfoot hadn't folded when it folded, I would never have got that job at Rad Game Tools. And so it's hard to be sad about Muckyfoot folding because, you know, the thing after that was amazing. And then, you know, because I worked at Rad Game Tools, I got onto the Intel project and worked on Larrabee, and that was insane. That was, you know, probably the most productive time in my life working on Larrabee, and it wouldn't have happened without Rad Game Tools, and that wouldn't have happened unless Muckyfoot folded. So
everything
you know,
happens for a reason.
Everything happens, and it, you know, getting hung up on like, oh, you know, yeah, it's sad not to work with those guys, but you know, Muckyfoot folding, like we got, what was it? I worked at Muckyfoot 4 years, I think it was, maybe 5 years. That's a good time. 4 or 5 years is that's a good little sort of mini career.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. So, yeah, you know, mixed feelings about the whole thing.
Well, what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was going to say. Well,
all philosophical on you, sorry.
I did have something in the back of... Oh, yes, I remember. When Muckyfoot, you know, folded and shut down, where did everything go? All the assets and all the stuff that you had, the games and all that, what happened to it? Because obviously I know Mike had the source code for Urban Chaos and he released that publicly, but, you know, there was a lot of stuff that you guys worked on, especially the prototypes and all that you also worked on. Obviously, it had to go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't part of management. I wasn't a director. I was just a coder. So I never saw the details of that. But yeah, obviously, Mike Diskett had all the stuff to Urban Chaos and he released that, and that was cool. And I know Guy Simmons, who was lead on StarTopia, he still has all that stuff, and he's looking at making a modern port on that. So it kind of runs, the original runs on the PC, but it's kind of janky. And I did like a slight graphics update to it many years ago, and Guy wants to do a proper graphics update. So he still owns all that stuff. That's all still, you know, ex-Muckyfoot property. That's not the publisher's property. Now, I believe all the Blade 2 stuff is the property of the publisher. And like it's you know, it's tied in with the film, so we can't use any of that stuff. The technology was Muckyfoot's, and I don't remember what happened to that. I remember Bulletproof Monk became the property of the publisher, and I forget which publisher it was.
Because I'm pretty sure there is footage of that prototype somewhere. It might have been footage, it might have been screenshots, but I know that's floating around.
And I know they tried to get one of their other developers to finish the project. But that was, we knew that was insane at the time. We were using this weird hybrid of Python and C++ that was very weird. It was kind of cool when it worked, but it was, even today, it would be a weird hybrid. Lots of Matthew Rosenfeld did a bunch of really cool stuff, melding Python and C++. And the idea was that we'd write the code. We'd prototype everything in Python, which is a good language is a very quick language to develop in, but it runs very slowly. And so the idea was you prototype everything in Python, and then when you were sure, yeah, this is what we want to do, then we'd port it to C for the performance.
Yeah.
And that was such a weird tool chain, and it still is. And so, yeah, the publisher said, oh, well, you guys are history, sod off. We're not paying you anymore. But we're going to take this project and give it to one of our pet developers, and they're going to finish it. And we were like, no, they're bloody not. They will not have a clue what the hell was going on.
And they didn't.
And sure enough, they didn't. Never got done. And I forget if there was eventually a Bulletproof Monk game, but it was a ground up. If there was, it was a ground up rewrite. And so that's where all that stuff lives, and where all the various other prototypes of games that we pitched to various publishers. I don't know who owns that stuff.
I would love to see this PC version of Blade 2 that apparently did exist, because I always wondered why there was never a PC version. The only thing I could think of was because of the 360 combat. You can't really translate that to keyboard and mouse, and if you stop flailing the mouse around to punch people. So,
no, we used controllers. I don't remember if we ever had a mouse-driven version. I just don't remember. I'm pretty sure we all used controllers to play the PC version.
I'm assuming the load screens were like instant. I mean, back then maybe it wasn't as fast as you would assume, but I'm assuming it was a lot faster than PS2 and Xbox.
Yeah, because I mean, the PC version was what we all developed on, right? You don't give the designer a PS2 version. You give them a PC version and you can tweak things as you're going along and reload, and it's just and you can display debug info easily, and it's just way quicker to develop on the PC. I don't know if we actually sort of finished the game on the PC, like if it was ever like end-to-end playable or anything like that. We probably didn't. Like it might not have even had load and save on the PC. So I don't remember, but we never planned to ship the PC version, and that wasn't at the time. That was completely uncontroversial. Like we knew when we signed Blade 2, there's no point in doing a PC version. We just do that so that we can see what's going on. Like there was no extra graphics, there was no extra anything, right?
Yeah.
It was just a straight version of the console stuff, just because it's easier to develop on. So it's not like there's some lost PC version. It's just a version that happens to run on the PC. There's nothing extra there.
Well, it's just nice to know that it did exist, because I always wondered, was there a thought about releasing it on PC, and it just never happened. But now I know that it was never even planned. It was just a thing that you used.
And that was standard at the time. There were genres of games that, of course you did a PC version because they're just much easier to develop. But
then it costs money to release it as well. So
it costs money to release it. You got to press the discs. You got to do QA on a PC, right? We didn't have to QA the PC version, except in that it made QA easier for the console versions. But like, we didn't QA all the different graphics cards, for example, right? If it didn't work on a specific graphics card, we just bought a graphics card that it did work on, right? Whereas, because we all remembered the StarTopia thing, which was, a lot of work. Like the last 4 months of StarTopia was just trying out every damn graphics card and tweaking the game for that graphics card. And there was no way we were doing that for Blade. We could never have shipped it. If the publisher had turned around at the end and go, okay, now we're doing a PC version, it would be like, that's another 6 months, mate, and a bunch of, there was never a version that was shippable. And that was normal. That's what everyone did. Every console game you have ever seen almost certainly has a version that runs on a PC, but it probably won't run on your PC. It runs on whatever was in the office at the time.
Yeah, well, I guess that's why most PC ports of some games are offhanded to another developer to port, because
That's right. Yep.
it's
Yeah.
just easier to do it that way. There's a
Yeah.
couple of differences in the Xbox version that I did notice. They're very minor, but I did notice that obviously the loading screens had the controller, whereas on the PS2 version you had a picture of the level, and all the shoot button was on the trigger, whereas on the PS2 it's on the A button. And I always wondered why they're changing the controls from version to version, and like you can't change them. Like there is some stuff you can change on Xbox, but you can't swap the shoot to X or to
Yeah.
A from the trigger.
I don't remember why that was. I'm sure there was a good. It was probably something like the PS2 controller just didn't. The fire button didn't work well, or maybe we wanted it to work with the older controllers or something. I just don't remember. Um,
Well,
yeah, there's always minor differences like that.
yeah,
Um,
it's
and
little
also,
stuff.
yeah, and like the picture of the controller, I think that the problem there might have been the there's a difference between the Japanese PlayStation controller and the English and American PlayStation controller.
Yeah,
And there was some problem of like knowing which one was connected. And then if you displayed the picture of the wrong one, then Sony would kick you out of certification. And so we're like, oh, screw that. So we just didn't show the controller at all, and that solved that problem. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff like that that's really just really goofy.
oh,
Uh,
I see. There is another thing that I did notice. There's three versions of Blade 2 on PS2, and that's the NTSC version, the PAL version, and then there is a specific French version. Why?
oh boy.
Because
Uh,
there is differences in the French version. I have played the French version. I have done the speedruns on it. There is minor differences, but it's pretty much the same. Obviously, it's just in French. But this is the only version that has a different language, and that's French.
hmm.
And it's just
I
weird to me that the PAL version just didn't include switching language, but there's a separate French version.
I
But then
don't
again, I've never
remember.
been able to find an actual disc of it. I've always wondered
Right.
why.
That's a good question. I don't remember. It may have been something as simple as we couldn't fit the French and the English voices on the same disc, just
Right.
out of space. It might have been as simple as that. I remember there was a big kerfuffle over the German version because uh, at the time there was this weird law in Germany where if you got like in the UK it was simple. We were an 18 rated game, right? We had blood and decapitation and all this sort of shit, right? So it was
Yeah.
just an 18 rated game and that was that. But the equivalent age rating in Germany, there was no 18 rated game. What there was adult rated. But adult in Germany at the time meant like sex. So if you were an 18 rated game, that meant you could only get sold in sex shops, which obviously, destroyed the sales, right?
Yeah.
And so there was, and the one down from that was the equivalent of like 15. And we were not a 15 rated game, right? We had decapitation and gore going everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a 15 game. And so for above 15 in Germany, that was you are only sold in pawn shops. So that was a
Yeah.
disaster. So they said, so we actually we actually thought about this, and we had it was so awesome. We had this censored mode for Germany where it still had the spurts of blood everywhere, but they had black censor rectangles over them. And like when you chopped a guy's head off, the head would still go flying and rolling, but there'd be this black rectangle censoring it.
That's actually
And
pretty funny. I
it
think
was
I've seen something like that before.
it was the funniest mode ever and almost more disturbing. and we actually built that and played it, and the publisher really seriously thought about releasing that version in Germany, and they couldn't do it. They were just, this is so stupid and so weird, and people would complain and stuff, and it was so goofy. And in the end, I think they just didn't release it in Germany.
I don't think it
um,
released anywhere other than the French version, as far as I'm aware. Because
I know we did do a German language version, but it was only sold in like Austria or Switzerland. So if you're a German and you wanted it, you had to drive across the border and buy the game and
I've
bring it back.
never seen that.
And then I don't remember if, and then I think I don't remember if we certainly made that version, and then the publisher might have gone, oh look, there's no point, we won't sell any of those anyway. Like, it's Switzerland and Austria only. Come on, like, if you can't sell in mainland German, the main part of Germany, then there's just no point. So maybe
Yeah.
they decided just to not do the German version at all. I don't remember. I just remember this awesome, crazy version we did for Germany with these censorship things, and like, you'd chop a guy's arm off and this black rectangle would go flying, and it was just hilarious and bonkers.
Could there be any of that like left over in the main game? Because I'm pretty
Oh
sure
yeah,
that at some point I've killed someone, and I swear I've seen black rectangles for no reason, and I've always wondered why. But maybe it's just a glitch that can sometimes happen that just causes it to trigger. I could be wrong,
it's
but I do remember something like that.
it could be a glitch. I bet. Yeah, I mean, the code might still be in there, and if you find the magic bit to flip inside the thing, it'll turn it on or something. I don't know. It
Was
it.
there ever a debug mode for the game? I'm assuming there was, where you could
Oh yeah.
fly around and.
Oh yeah. 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 Again,
Do
I
you
don't
know if
remember
if the offset and stuff for that was left in the game, or was it removed before it shipped? Like, theoretically,
it's.
if you could get into the memory and turn it on, would it turn on?
I don't remember specifically for Blade, but the standard practice is to leave those in, because that's the version you give to like the publisher's QA, right? So they can skip
Yeah.
levels and do all that stuff. So it's vital to have all those tools in there for QA, both the publisher and the platform holder. Like Sony wants to play that, and so to pass their shipping guidelines and stuff.
Yeah.
And so once those are approved like that, you don't want to touch the code. So in theory, you could take that code out again for the final shipping version, but you might introduce more bugs that way. So you generally don't.
Well,
So
now you've intrigued me,
and
because
that's
I've
true of
always had the idea of finding it. I just didn't know if it was there. But if there's a chance that it could be in the game still, because I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think anyone's ever found it. It would be nice to
yeah.
see if I can dig through and turn it on.
And what I don't know is, like, there's lots of different ways of turning it on, right? There's magic button combos, the old up down, left right stuff.
But I'm
Um,
assuming that's not in the game because someone would have found that already if it was.
I
Probably.
just I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. Um, and then there's sneakier ways, like you have to insert a memory card with a certain special file on it, right? That's a very common one, because then you can just give the publisher's QA, you just say, make sure this memory card is in the machine, and then it unlocks all the things, and then so on. And I don't remember if we did that or not. But that's another way to do it. So yeah, sometimes, like, if you don't have that file, yeah, you're never going to find it. But sometimes even that's a hassle, right? Because the publisher goes like, oh, we don't want to ask you for a new memory card every time, and we lose the memory card. So just make it a button press combo.
Yeah.
uh, and that is the common thing. So it might still be in there, but I do not remember what it is.
Well, now I've got a new goal to try and find that, but because I've always wondered if it was there, um, like, because I'm assuming that I don't know if it would be in this specific thing, but I would assume that there was a way to see, certain triggers with, the debug or through like certain like map viewers and stuff like that, you would see triggers you need to hit.
Yeah. Man, I don't remember. But they got increasingly well hidden because uh, people didn't want to show art that wasn't meant to be seen, right? A
Yeah.
bunch of games have got into trouble with that because they do like some temporary art that's like they take some art off the web and they just have it as a temporary art, and then you take it, you quotes take it out of the game, but it's still on the disk. And if you get to the debug mode, you can see that, and then you get problems there. Like the most infamous one was the hot coffee thing in GTA, right?
Yeah.
That caused a huge kerfuffle. And so it used to be that the secret cheat modes were like, they're kind of fun, and you didn't make them too hard to find because it was kind of fun when the public found them and could look behind the scenes, because like that's fun, that's fine. You already bought the game, you played the game, you enjoyed the game, you want to look behind it a bit. We don't care if you find the cheat codes and do all that stuff. But then you get this problem of like, oh shit, did we clear that with legal and all that sort of stuff.
Were the cheat
you know
codes in Blade 2 meant to be found, or were they used for you to test the game?
I
Or
just
that?
don't remember. I
Oh,
don't remember. Like I know, like I remember on StarTopia, we intended them to be found. There were some fun cheat codes in StarTopia. We totally intended them to be found, and I think we actually published them like 6 months after the game shipped.
yeah.
They're up there, and you can find them. In Blade 2, I do not remember us saying, "Oh, this will be a fun Easter egg for people to find." I think we were just super worried about, like, again, time pressure was everything. We already had some problems with like, oh shit, we can't show that on screen because it's from the film and we're not allowed to do that. And so
Mm.
I think for Blade 2, we said, no, we are not intending there to be any secrets or anything that we intend you to find. I'm pretty sure it was just like, no, get it out the door. Sorry, this isn't a fun project the way Urban Chaos had some fun little bits and StarTopia had some fun little bits. Blade 2, we just didn't have time to make sure that all the secrets were approved. So I don't think, but I don't remember how you turn them on. But it can be really obscure, like, oh, it's only in this, you have to go to this options screen and have this option selected, and you have to have the controller plugged into port 3, and you have to press, or you have to have a controller in port 2 and port 3 and press these buttons on one controller and these buttons on the other, and that unlocks it. You can make it really obscure. There's
Yeah.
just no way people are going to find by accident. So
Well, there's still
um,
stuff in games that have been out for years. Easter eggs getting found still today. Like I think
yeah,
there was a
yeah,
developer recently who mentioned about a certain game. It might have been a Borderlands game. I don't remember how there's an Easter egg that still hasn't been found yet after all these years. And it's just things that if people look hard enough, you might find it. But if people
right.
don't,
But
then they're not going to.
again, those are Easter eggs that you kind of intend for the public to find because it's fun and keeps people talking about the game after it's shipped.
Yeah.
My recollection is we did not do any of that for Blade 2. We just didn't have time, and we were worried about, like you say, you're already having the publisher scrutinize the thing for stuff like, no, that's from the film, you can't use that, or stuff like that can get you in actual serious legal problems.
Yeah.
So I think we decided early on, sorry, none of that, we can't do that. When you're having problems with a lead character looking too much like Wesley Snipes, like,
The way
yeah,
he's
you
meant
get
to
it
look.
right. No, he looks too much like the real guy. Okay, fine. It kind of makes you gun shy. So yeah, I just don't remember if
It's
there
not
was
worth
anything.
dealing with.
It's not worth the risk yet.
It's funny because when I spoke to Mark, he when I mentioned this idea to him, he said that it was awesome. I'm a fan of Blade 2 and that he was glad that I liked the game. And then you say that I must like pain. It's just, but then again, you're the one who's sitting here doing it with me. It's funny because in a way, the game is painful, but it's painful in a way that I think I've done that to myself by playing as much as I have done.
Yeah.
But for you,
Well,
it's because of developing the game. It's hard work.
Rosie has a sorry, call him Rosie. Everyone called him Rosie. Partly because he had red hair. Uh, but and also we had like 3 marks in the building. So
That makes
um,
sense.
so Mike Diskett was Disky, Mark Rose was Rosie, and Mark Adami was Adami or Zarb. So Rosie was Rosie. Sorry, Mark Rose. So Mark Rose joined Muckyfoot as a QA guy, and he was really young. I forget how. I think he was a teenager. I think he was 19 when he joined us, and he just joined as a QA guy. We had a stream of young young 18, 19-year-olds go through as QA, and we train them up in QA, and they stick around for a while, and then they go get a proper job.
Yeah.
And Rosie joined us, and he is just another QA guy. That's great. And we had some senior QA guys that stuck around, but we had this sort of pool of people that go through because they joined, but like, oh, I like playing games, and then find out it's really hard work, and actually they didn't enjoy playing games 24/7 quite as much as they thought. So Rosie was being really QA, and he was good QA. He'd write up great reports, he'd find some stuff. And then he started asking people about programming. And it turned out that secretly he was a really good programmer. And so we're like, oh, interesting. And then he was asking me about like code physics. And so I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And I forget who came up with the idea, but we realized like, yeah, well, we know the PS2 can't do it, but the Xbox might be able to. And I forget if Rosie just did it himself on the PC version, just coded up the code physics and said, here, look what I did. And we were like, holy shit, we could put this in the game. I
Yeah.
think that's what he did. Or if someone asked him to do it, I forget what it was. But if someone did ask him, it was just casually, and he just took it and run with it. And then we're sitting there with like this guy who's clearly a really talented programmer, but his actual job is QA, and we're paying him the shitty rates of a QA guy. And so we feel kind of bad about this. And so I think eventually we did pay him decently. But he just kept pushing more and more. He wanted to know more and more of the details about game development. And he just was so good at it. So dealing with all the weird little shit that we do in game dev. And so he was doing the coat on the Xbox version, and he helped me with the way we did shadows on the Xbox version. And he clearly had an aptitude for this. Yes, he was a talented coder, but he also knew like how to trade off like, oh, well, the correct way to do it is this, but we don't have the budget for that, like the performance budget. But if we fake it like this, that looks good enough for the game. That's fine. So he's really good at that stuff. So he did the coat. He helped with some of the shadow stuff on the Xbox. And so we're heading into the last few months of development. I think it was like we had maybe 2 or 3 months to ship. And we don't have a final level.
Oh, is this the story you were gonna tell me?
Yeah.
Oh, exciting.
And we've got most of the levels of the game are coming together, but we do not have a final level. We've got some vague ideas about what to do for the final level. We've got a bit of artwork that has been mocked up, but everyone knows this is all just temporary. This is thinking out loud stuff. None of this is remotely shippable. And the one prototype we had wasn't fun. And it was really stupid as well. It had some goofy thing that someone had just pulled out of their ass that it was just like, it doesn't make sense in the game, but just let's put it in there. Then at least we've got a final level. But it was junk, and everybody knew it was junk. And we kept, every now and again, and we're, crunching through bugs, and it's, we should have had a final level ages ago. And this thing's just, we've got this ship date that can't move. And we're all just staring into the light going, oh my God, what are we going to do? We need a final level.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, now it's so bad that everyone's like trying not to think about this problem and just hoping someone else will solve it. And so then Rosie starts staying late after the rest of us have gone home, and he teaches himself the game editor and how to make a level. So he teaches himself, I forget if we were using Max or Maya or 3D Studio. I think it was 3D Studio at the time. So he teaches himself the art tools, and he teaches himself how to make a level and how to script it all. And like he actually just makes a little level of Blade just to teach himself how to do this. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, you now know more than every single other person in the building, because I don't know how to make a level. I know how to do the graphics code, but I don't know how to make a level in 3D Studio Max. And now Rosie does. And Rosie also knows how to do the graphics. And he knows how to tie the sounds in. And he knows how to tie the events in. And he knows how to import meshes. And holy shit, this guy's amazing. He's just taught himself the, soup to nuts. He is a one-man development shop. And we're like, holy crap. And he says, and also, I've got an idea for the final level. And we're like, are you shitting me? Are you going to save this goddamn project? Is this 19-year-old going to save the goddamn project? And he did. And the final level is basically like 90% Rosie's work. And I was just astonished at what he did. He saved Blade 2, and God bless him. And he yeah, it was really cool. And yeah, we finally, started paying him properly, and he became a proper, full developer.
Yeah.
And I think later on he went on he worked at Lionhead for a long time, and I'm not sure what he's doing now. But Mark Rose was just such an amazing. It was amazing to watch someone else go from that process of like, yeah, I know how to code, and go, but I've never done, proper games development, and go through that process in like 6 months to you just saved the project.
Yeah.
And that was
really cool.
That was fantastic. So as crappy as that final level is, like 80% of that is Mark Rose that it works at all. Because yeah, we just, that didn't exist until about 2 months before we shipped. So yeah, that final level is all rosy. So
when I was talking to him, he did. I did pull the message up so I can read it. What he said, and he said, "Yeah, Tom Forsyth's a good lad. He taught me all I know about graphics coding. That's awesome, man. Super great guy, Tom." So, he in a way looked up to you specifically for something that you helped him do, which. And then to go from that to whatever he's worked on.
We ended up. I think we moved him to the desk beside me, and we worked closely on the Xbox graphics together. So yeah, but all the level, working out how to use the tools and the inspiration for the level, that was all just him. He just went and did it because he didn't know what he was doing was impossible.
Yeah. Well, it's just great with what someone can do if they put their mind to it, and
if they don't know that they can't do that, if they don't know what they're trying to do is impossible, don't tell them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really cool. So he's the guy in a sense I look up to, because he showed me like, yeah, this is what you can do if you really get on with it. This is how much you can pack into your brain and how much end-to-end stuff you can do. Really, really impressive. Anyway, he went on to great things. He doesn't need my praise, but
yeah, it's really cool. So I think it's about time to do the speed run. We've been talking for like nearly 2 hours, which is a lot longer than I was expecting. And don't get me wrong, we can carry on talking, but we can talk about the actual speedrun, and then if there's some time afterwards, we can also talk a little bit more before we call it. But let me get that set up really quickly, and then we can play. And then, like, because you told me that you've only seen up until the fourth level, correct? So you haven't seen much more than that.
Yeah, I think it was the fourth. Yeah.
So you've seen some of the broken stuff, but you haven't even, you
It'll be
haven't seen it
interesting to
all.
see. Yeah.
Also, I will point out I am playing on the American version because one specific trick. Remember that I had told you I found a new trick recently, and it's very hard. It only works on the NTSC version. I don't know why it just won't work on PAL. But before that I always used PAL. So
interesting. I mean, there's it's 50 hertz versus 60 hertz, right? So
yeah, it probably could be something to do with that. I'll mention that specific thing when I get to it.
Okay.
But it's very funky. Hang on a minute. Wesley Snipes is in the load screens at the start of the game.
Yeah, I think their publicity shot we're allowed to use.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I did notice one thing as well. In the Xbox version, when you go to the main menu, you have to press start first. You don't do that on PS2. Just a little weird other thing that I did also notice.
Yeah, again, that'll be like platform specific TRC that they mandate.
Yeah.
So Microsoft will say if you want to ship on an Xbox, you have to have a thing where you press start or something. And usually, I mean, I don't remember if it was specific to Blade 2, but the press start thing is so that the game knows which controller to look at, because you might have multiple controllers plugged in.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
So it wants to know which is your controller that you're using and which one is the one that you can ignore because the cat's sitting on it or something. So that's a requirement. To the press start is you declaring I'm using this controller, and it means that you can just pick up any old controller. And I think it didn't apply to the PS2 or something because you couldn't plug that many controllers in. Or
I think there's only two. Was it?
Yeah.
I think on some it's only two.
And so you could insist that people only plug it into controller 1, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like Xbox, they said no, you should be able to plug it into any port and play the game, and which is reasonable. So that's why you have to press start to say this controller, this is the one I'm using.
Okay, that makes sense. Right, let me switch to the game, and then I will screen share that to you. I do have a timer. I'm probably going to put more effort into this specific screen. I either centered the game, so you can see that, yeah, on Discord.
No,
Really?
I see it on Twitch. But not on Discord.
I screen shared it on Discord. I think you have to go back into our chat if you're not already on it, and it should be there. Let me restart it. Come up then. Can you see it now?
No, I see a screen, but it's just got your picture in it or someone's picture.
Oh, I think you've got to click my picture, and then it should like pop back out.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, okay, and then you can just click into that, and it'll full screen it.
Derp. Yep, fixed.
You're meant to know how to make games.
No, this stuff works. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let me minimize this. I am going to use a timer, so you can see the little 0 in the top right. That's the timer. I'm not good because usually I'd have splits so I can see how far I am ahead or behind of my PB, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a run. I was initially thinking about not using the timer at all, but I thought why not? Because then you can see how long it takes, which is fun in itself. Oh, I need to load the save. So yeah, what I do, I have 3 saves. So this one is to do a new game speedrun. This one is for new game plus, and that one is to do all objectives, which I don't know why I did that. It's hard. It's not as bad as doing glitchless because You can still do skips in that, but basically what I do is I do all the sub-objectives in the game. Obviously, you'd know about them because you played the game.
Yeah, that's going to take a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes about an hour and 20 minutes, so it's about 40 minutes longer than New Game Plus. Yeah, I don't do the training.
Pursue the vampire,
and I just go straight into this level. And then when I made the category for the game, I made the timer start when I skipped this cutscene.
9:20 p.m.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, go. That's the wrong button to split. It's fine. You can chime in if you want on anything, or if you wonder how something works, I can try and explain it. What I'm doing. Yeah, now I'm out of the map.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Nice and white. It's weird. This specific level is actually like when you're out of bounds in this game. On the Xbox version, everything is black, out of bounds, but for some reason on this it's not. Very strange. So I can actually see Blade, not black.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know why Disky chose this color to clear the screen, but he did, and yeah, sometimes it makes debugging a little easier.
That's the first level.
Yeah,
so,
that's ridiculous. First level, he's just out of
this
bounds
one's
and
even
then run
better.
to the elevator.
This one is even better. This one's great. So this level has the second skip I ever found. So you have to go and like destroy 3 fuse boxes, but I'm not going to do that because that's slow. It takes a long time to do. So I'm just going to kind of just jump into this pot, and it's just going to push me through the wall. Don't know why. It just happens.
Lovely.
And then just end the level.
Oh god. Oh.
It's great. And
God, our QA team are from the time we're like, oh my god, why didn't we find that? Oh god, what a mess.
to be fair, that only works on PS2. You can't do that on Xbox for some reason. So you should be. It's not your fault. It's got nothing to do with you.
See, that's the weird thing, right? There was the physics and the game and stuff like that there was, as far as I remember, there was no special code for the platform. You know, QA is mainly playing on the PC. Yeah. So you try not to do special code for the platform. So it's interesting that it only works on one and not the other. There's always small numerical.
More interesting, because we're gonna do something that we excuse me, sir. We're gonna do something that we use a lot, which is just side jumping. Because in this game, side jumping is very broken. Very
broken. This was all those bugs, all those out of map bugs, all that side jumping stuff.
And it was
we
never
were so
fixed.
tempted. Well, this is the fixed version. You should have seen it before.
I would love to have seen it before. But the side jumping is very broken in more of a sense than just that, which I'll get to later on. But you can take a sigh of relief because this level you can't skip, because I need to destroy the computers before I can end the level. So
right.
You get to watch me do and a level the normal intended way.
So this is a good time. I got to tell you this story. So this is perfect. So you know the gameplay, right? You know, beat up vampires and whatever. So at one point, Mike Diskette did a bit of clever AI, right? He decided the vampires were too stupid, so he did this bit of clever AI where, you're standing there. I mean, you're not, but you're standing there, you're beating up a couple of guys, and then one of them gets to low health. And what he'd do is when he'd get to low health, he'd run off and he'd run off to some other vampires in the level and he'd bring them back to help attack you. And so the theory was that you'd notice this and you'd chase him down before he could do that. Right, so it was meant to, you're meant to be standing there and you're just basically standing in place, beating up a couple of guys, and then one of them runs off and it breaks up the thing. So you have to chase this guy down and kill him before he fetches help. That was the theory. That didn't happen. What actually happened was you'd keep beating up the guys. You'd have 4 guys around you. One of them would get to low health and start to run off. You'd just keep on beating up the other 3. You wouldn't notice really that one of them had buggered off because you're busy beating up the other 3. And then he'd come back with his friends, and so in the meantime you've like killed 2 of them and you're facing off against one of them, and then like, oh, 2 more join in, so now you're beating up another 4 guys, and then one of them gets low health and he runs off and he gets some more vampires and brings them back. And so you haven't moved, right? You're still beating up people, and just for some reason, and you don't know really why, vampires keep arriving, and then and you just keep beating them up and beating them up and beating them up, and like after like 15 minutes, you're still in the start of the level. You've killed everybody. You've just been murdering people in this one room for 15 minutes, and you've killed everybody in the level. And so that's the game. and so we're like, oh, well, it was a nice theory, making these guys smart and go and get help. But that, in practice, that's what happens, is you walk into the start of the level, you beat people up for 15 minutes, and then you walk through this empty level. And so we took it out again, because it wasn't fun.
And so that's... But...
And it's always this cautionary tale of like, oh, I want smarter AI. It's like, no, you don't. This is what happens when you do smart AI.
So this skip here is the first one I ever found. I just kind of like stood in a spot and just kind of side jumped and just went. Okay, I messed that up, but I just went into this railing. And I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Into the railing. Oh.
Because the out of bounds in this game, obviously you would know more about it than me, is set. I failed again. It's set on like a plane. Like there's a floor that you can stand on out of bounds, and each area that you can get to has this floor that you can stand on. So here you fall down, and then we can just go over here.
Oh, there you go.
The level. And just shoot these, and then there.
Oh my god, what a game breaker! Yeah, that side jump, that was the source of all these out of bounds bugs that QA were just finding, and we'd patch them and find them, patch them.
Because I'm assuming from all my theories I've had of this game, the game detects where you're going to land when you jump, and if there's it's basically okay. You jump for this long, there's a floor, we're gonna put you on that floor, but then you end up being on top of something higher, but the game doesn't know what to do, so it still puts you at the level of the floor that you were meant to land on in the first place, and that just puts you through the floor. And bounds, so.
Basically, yeah.
And I'm using that a lot.
We don't want to simulate the actual physics of you doing the jump, right? It's just an animation. We don't want to simulate any of that physics. So
yeah,
the collision detection is doing very approximate things, and so sometimes it can tunnel through, because it knows like, oh, this animation blade has to end up this much to the right. He has to end up there because we don't have an animation for jumping sort of to the higher thing or the lower thing.
Yeah.
And so it can just shortcut through walls like that. And we did the you side jump onto a wall and so it bounces you off. But that, I can see why that. Oh, what are you doing?
This is the trick that I was talking about. That's really difficult. So if you stand at a really specific spot here and line yourself up perfectly, which is awkward to do with a PS2 controller, in the right spot and jump to the right and then back to the left. If you do it correctly, for whatever reason, you'll just get put on the other side of this door. And it's really hard to do, and I'll get it eventually. It just might take me a while. It's very difficult. There we go. And I don't know why it works, it just does.
Oh my god. That's crazy.
And that's the newest thing I found. And I've always wanted to get past that door. For years I've tried to find a way and I just never could, and then I accidentally found that. But then you're wondering, what am I going to do? The door's closed. What am I going to do? How am I going to get back to the door with this canister?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm going to do a thing where I'm going to just place it right there. Put it down. I'm going to go back over here, because there's a nice set of stairs over here that I can use those cheeky side jumps again.
Stairs and jumping. It was just the bane of our existence. And so many times we thought,
oh no, I got stuck. Okay, yeah, that can happen. If you jump too close, you get stuck in the floor. I'm gonna have to do it. But you know, this ain't about going fast. You get the idea. So I won't spoil what I'm gonna do. I'll just do it again, and hopefully I can get that clip a bit faster. But I can actually explain some stuff here. So it's weird because in this level, obviously you're meant to go. You go out of here. You're meant to go through the door up the top, and then go to the right. Turn off the power, which opens that door, and you can get through. But this level is really long. It's quite difficult. It's easy to die in. And could you also explain to me like why sometimes like the damage that the enemies do is completely random? Like, do you know why that is? Like sometimes you can get shot, it does no damage, and sometimes it'll do loads.
I forget, I'm afraid. I didn't do any of the gameplay code, so that would be Disky's stuff, almost certainly. Yeah, I just didn't do any of the gameplay coding, so I'm not sure.
Like, it would have been great to have like a thing where I could get like you and Mike both here, and then you could talk to each other and stuff as well, and that would be cool. But
yeah, well, Mike now lives in Australia, so getting all three of us on the same time is basically impossible. So, yeah.
Okay, there we go. First try, easy.
Oh,
I'm gonna do this again, and I'm not gonna fail it this time, hopefully. But yeah, so when you go to the end of this level and you turn on that switch, right here, there's meant to be a health pack and some ammo. That doesn't spawn until you hit that switch. And it's also weird because the enemies at the end of the level that try and block you taking the canister to the air duct, those enemies also don't spawn. And the way we used to do this level was you'd have to build up rage to be able to just run through and not get blocked while you're holding the canister right to the end. Now we can do this, we don't have to do that anymore because we can just go out of bounds and just do it this way, which it doesn't save as much time as you think. It only saves about a minute or so. Well, let me see if I can do it. There we go. Now I'm falling down. This plane, by the way, is the worst thing. I could never get up there because this plane is all the way down here, so I can't get high enough to get in that area. That's why I had to clip the door. But when I found a way to clip the door is when it got good. So now I'm back in here. I'm just going to go back up the stairs because I like stairs. And then, I can just, come up to the door and voila, canister.
Oh, and the canister goes through the door. Brilliant. Well done. Well done.
And now I can just run to the end of the level and skip doing the other stuff.
Of course, normally we'd never test that because you can't get there unless the door's open.
You can actually pick the canister up out of bounds too if you do the same thing. You put it against the wall, go out of bounds and pick it up. You can pick it up out of bounds, but you just get stuck because the game gets confused. This guy sneaked through. Carry on.
No, we never checked, like, are you putting the canister somewhere out of bounds? Because it's like, well, but you can't get there, so why would we check? But of course, you can get through there. That's brilliant.
I'm also going to use that later on as well. I'll talk about more. It's very useful. Yeah, so there's two guys that spawn there. They always spawn. And then we can just... So I lost about 3 minutes failing that, but it's whatever. I'm not bothered about doing it super fast. I just want to show you, what I'm doing, and that's what it's about. Yeah. So get excited. Now we've got the subway with the trains, but I don't care about subways, so I'm just gonna not be bothered with that. Okay. I'm just gonna kind of jump behind this. Punch and through the wall. And I can just run in a straight line and jump here for about 2 minutes, and I'll get to the end of the level.
So you just kicked yourself through the wall, and then you're just running in it.
There is one glitch later on, which I think is going to blow your mind.
Now it is weird because now the background is black, whereas in the first level it was tan. Isn't that weird? I don't know why. I don't remember why that was.
That first level, I'm pretty sure, is the only level that does that, and I don't know why. It's very strange. I think it's only in like a certain spot as well, but yeah. So we just kind of jump in, and if you don't jump out of bounds, you get soft locked. If you hit a plane where it like when you said when it streams, I'm assuming when it streams, if you hit a transition where it starts to stream another area, and there's that white box I was talking about. You see it?
Oh yeah,
that's unused.
Yeah.
If you hit an area,
so that'd be geometry that's there, but we never put the textures on the disc, and that's why it's white.
And it has collision. You can go in it and then you get in it and you're stuck.
Right, but you can't see anything because there's no textures. Yeah, that makes sense.
But and there's the end of the level right there. You have no idea how hard it was for me to find perfect ways to navigate out of bounds because it's just black. Can't really see where you're going.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's it. That level's done. But now it's a sad day because we've got. Why did you put escort levels in the game?
Oh God, they're a mistake in every single level, aren't they? And
well, this is the only one we actually have to deal with. So this level is going to be about 8 minutes of me just protecting Whistler. There's nothing I can do to speed it up. If you want to tell me where to skip it, I'd love that. But I've even tried. I played with the idea that Whistler. You need Whistler to trigger the end, right? So I even played with the idea of stunning him with a UV grenade where he's standing where he's meant to, and then hitting the end trigger. But that doesn't. He actually has to plant all the bombs and then come back for it. So there's not really much to do here. So if you want to talk about stuff, then go ahead. Because I'm just going to play this level normal. If you got anything you want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, escort missions are just terrible. We had a few in Urban Chaos, and they were just annoying. Yeah. And so at least with this one, I don't think Whistler can die.
He can die. Die in every level.
Oh, can he? Oh, for fuck's sake. Why did we do
that? Yeah, but hopefully if I do it correctly, he won't take any damage. But this level is where you introduce the Reapers, which is the enemy that can only be killed by UV grenade. So I have to hope that I can kill them, so Whistler doesn't get beat up by them. But the Reapers aren't that big of a deal because they actually stay in each area, so you can just kind of ignore them. Also, here I'm going to try and save some by punching. But the Reapers stay in the area. They don't keep following you like the other vampires do. Also, why did you add these?
Because they're cool.
But they're random and they waste time.
That's right. But they look cool.
They do look cool.
And I remember on the Xbox we made the shadows extra cool. So like there's one where you stab him in the head with a stake and you get really close and the camera zooms really close, and it just looks gorgeous because the shadows are all working properly and stuff.
I will say that this game is graphically very good for its time. It looks really nice, and this was on the early life cycle of the PS2, so right it looks really good for the time.
Yeah, they did a really good job on the PS2. It was this was like, I remember Mark Baker. See, another Mark, right? So we got all these Marks in the company. That's why we call them Disky and Rosie and so. So Mark Baker and Disky, they tried to do the PS2 engine lots of different ways, and they kept running across hardware bugs that meant, like, yeah, in theory, according to the manual, it should work, and then it wouldn't, and it would just like randomly lock up because the PS2 had a glitch where, you know, an interrupt wouldn't trigger properly or whatever. So they rewrote the engine like 3 or 4 times in like major ways, and finally they got a version that was robust, and it was the dumbest version. Yeah. Like, they tried to be all clever and stuff, and none of that worked. So they did the dumbest thing they could possibly do that did definitely work. And that's what we ended up shipping with, because all the fancier stuff, you just like, yeah, it works for like 5 minutes, and then there's a glitch, the hardware loses an interrupt or misses a thing, and then it just stops, and we don't know why. So yeah, they stopped trying to be clever and did the dumbest thing, and that actually worked fine. So
yeah. Also, in this level, you can't get too far away from Whistler. In any of the AI, you go too far away from them, they will get enemies spawned on them and get beaten up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't hinder me in any way. Not really. It's what it is. It just means I have to stay super close to Whistler, or it's not going to be fun, because in this level is entirely based on his movement. If he gets stopped or punched, I lose time. So I have to make sure that I don't let anything happen to him.
look at him popping up and down the stairs because we didn't give him a proper walking up and down stairs animation.
Also, there is a little trick you can actually do right here. So there's meant to be enemies here that spawn when Whistler gets close to this to plant the bomb. But if we just stand over here, kill this Reaper while I'm at it, they won't spawn. They just don't even bother. We can just sit here, wait for him to plant it, and go. And it saves ammo, because ammo is very important. Also, let me see if I got that glitch. Okay, I didn't get it. Maybe it's only a PAL, but sometimes when you use UV grenades, they can get stuck on your neck, and they just stay attached to your body on your neck. I don't know why. I think it might only be a PAL issue. Yeah, it's just a graphic thing. Like when you use it, it just ends up being stuck on your neck. I don't know why. Probably just like a graphics bug, but I think it's only PAL.
I remember we had so many problems with the UV grenades, and I forget why. It's such a simple thing. We just had endless problems with it.
I do notice that the texture of like when it actually explodes is different on Xbox. It's like a big ball of light on Xbox. On this, it's just a flash. I assume that was like also graphically like capability that made it so it was changed.
Yeah. You're reminding me of something, and something clever we did on Xbox that we couldn't do on PS2. Yeah.
What was that?
I can't remember. I just remember we had to change it. Yeah. Now you've said that, you reminded me.
And you thought the Xbox version wasn't that much different. I know. I even said to you before, if there's a lot of stuff you can't remember, then that's all good.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming when you're watching it, as you're watching me play it,
it's like, reminding me of stuff. Yeah. Like all those blood splatters, the way we did those, that was really cool. Like I say,
and like the limbs falling off is.
Yeah, the way the limbs fall off is fantastic, and all that, we were really proud of getting that working, with the decapitation and the limbs coming off, and the way they sort of fade along the limb in those cool ways, and it was really cool, like getting the slow-mo mode and watching them slowly fade and getting it just right, and then in the game, of course, it's over in a second, but I think it all adds to it. And yeah, the way the blood splatters are persistent and hang around and stuff like that. Like that's the stuff, we spent a lot of time on, and I'm really proud that we got that all working.
Yeah. Make sure not to get... Because if I use the UV grenade in the wrong spot too, he will get stunned also, and he'll just stand there, and that's the worst possible outcome, because he'll stand still for a good 10 seconds.
Right.
That's slow. So right here there's going to be like 3 more enemies. I've got to hope that I can kill them all pretty quickly.
And again, you'll notice these sewers are really well lit. Like, I mean, these are the best lit sewers you've ever seen, because otherwise you can't see what you're doing. Yeah, not so much with the moody dark lighting in the sewers. We got lots of lights.
Yeah, and then that's it. This level is definitely the worst in the run because it's just long, but now we're going to get back to the fun stuff. So this is where you're going to see something which you probably didn't even know you could do.
City sewers.
If you side jump, then hold backwards and press jump again, you can jump backwards in the other and just ride about.
There we go, straight there. Perfect.
So you don't even need to like jump in one direction. Yeah,
look, it knows you're in the water. That's funny.
I'm just gonna jump.
And now it's purple. Why? Purple. Oh, I remember why the coloured background now. Yes.
Why?
It's a graphics problem. There were a couple of places where I think this is what it was. There were a couple of places where there was like little cracks in the geometry of the level, so that as you're moving around, you can just see through, between 2 walls or something like that. And it just looked funny.
Yeah. Because
you can see through into the, you're into this blackness. And so what that was easy.
You didn't even have to go back in the map. I like this level with the dinosaur vampire thing, but we can't do skips in this. This is just run to the end. It's
right.
You can get out of bounds, but it'd probably just be slower than, because of how many pipes there are and all the stuff you have to navigate around. It wouldn't just be worth it. And you can only get out of bounds on the Xbox version.
Gotcha.
Because do you know how you saw me doing like the side jumps to clip through stuff?
Yeah.
Well, you can stand on like the top of a staircase and side jump and jump back, and you can, on the PS2 version, you get like halfway in the floor, but then you get popped back up. For whatever reason on Xbox, you can actually clip the floor, and it doesn't work on PS2. So like this level, there's these little fire pits. The height on those fire pits is high enough that you can jump and actually clip through the floor. But it's like right here, there's a fire pit here, and you can do the side jump on this to clip out. But it doesn't work on PS2. It only works on Xbox.
How weird. Okay.
It is very weird. I don't understand why.
No, neither do I. Sorry.
So there is a cool thing that you can do as well. Anytime you jump, you can change direction. So right here, I'm going to jump forward, and then in midair, I'm going to jump backwards.
Yeah, I think that was a deliberate thing to make him just feel more dynamic. It's like mid-air control, like mid-air control in Mario, right? It doesn't make sense that you can change your velocity in mid-air, because what are you pushing off? It feels better. It doesn't.
Yeah, so I never knew that. I thought that was a bug, but now that I know that was intentional, maybe the idea of changing direction when you jump forward and backwards, you did, but you forgot to get rid of it from left to right, because you can do that. So maybe that was a thing that kind of slipped through the cracks when you could do it left to right. Also, I do like that you can shoot these to destroy them, which not many people do know you can do.
Yeah.
You can also shoot the doors to unlock them. You don't need to kick them down.
Right.
Which, even though in the literal guide it says to kick it, but you don't have to kick it. And obviously pushing doors in this game is slow, so even doors that are closed but you can push open, you still shoot them, because it's faster to just run through instead of having to get stuck on the door.
Yeah, that's right. We did a lot of
another cheeky.
This level was like the thing of like, you can break stuff. We like, oh, very nice. Straight through the floor. There you go. And it actually caused a bunch of problems with the streaming, because it's talking about the visibility system and knowing what's visible, and then it loads that stuff. The problem
this is probably the hardest part to navigate Oob in, to be honest. Oob means out of bounds.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go back in bounds here, because that will be not good. I'm just going to find a jump over here and the end of the level.
There we go. Maybe can that breaking thing open that?
Also, these nurses are awful with their needles.
Oh, they were, yeah.
When they stab you, you lose like half your health, no matter what you do. You just trigger the end of this level normally. Shoot this one again because you don't need to turn it. Also, it's funny because if you die during when they're like that, you don't actually fail. it just as long as you hit that final level like you're fine.
Yes.
Now this used to be this used to be the hardest trick, because it's kind of precise. The timing in which you can do these side jumps is very, very tight, especially on here. So we need to land on this tiny railing. We need to do this side. See, I mistimed it. You need to time it perfectly so you can get back over the railing, and then you can fall through. And here, it's very tricky to do. You need to line up perfectly, because this is obviously very small. Now we're out of bounds again.
There we go. Well done.
I'm just going to follow a specific path to find out where I am, and then jump and end up the level. Remember? Oh no, there was a thing that I mentioned. This is the level. This is one level that I know that has a soft lock. So right here, I'm going to go into the final area where Dr. Grant is strapped into the chair. If I go back in bounds, where I'm going to end up here. So if I go back in bounds here, which is where she's right there, I can kill these enemies right now. I could do that. If I was to do that without hitting this cutscene here, the game just crashes when it triggers the cutscene. I don't know why, but if I was to do all this what I'm about to do now and kill these before hitting that cutscene, when this one triggers, the game just freezes. Don't know why.
Yeah. the scripting will be get very confused about. Yeah, like what's going on.
Now you must be thinking to yourself, another escort level. Huh. This one's probably the longest in the game, apart from like
Gauntmoor Asylum.
Bloodsuckers. But obviously, you know, I don't care much for doing levels the intended way. But I do need to do this part. Let her open the door. So wait.
What the?
And kill these. I don't want to waste too much ammo because I actually need it. We'll see coming up. That's one more enemy.
How's that lock come?
Now we need to kill everyone here. Because obviously, you know, you don't really want to leave enemies around the AI or they will die. So I'm going to kill everyone here. Because I'm going to end up getting far away from Dr. Grant, which is obviously going to spawn enemies on top of her. But I need to do it quick enough that she won't die. So I want to make sure she has as much health as possible. Remember when we were talking about dodgy collision?
It's a common theme in the game.
You can just jump through that wall.
Nice.
And then I need to do a specific setup here. I'm going to side jump twice. I'm going to fall. I'm going to hold jump forward, and I can get past that corridor before it loads in. And I'm going to turn a bit to the right, jump down here, and then hello switch, shoot the switch, and then just hit the end double trigger before she dies, and that's it. That skips all that. You don't even have to take her back. Just ignore her and go.
Perfect. Look at that.
Pretty good. And now we've got the only boss fight, which there is some cool things you can do.
That was cool.
Incubation chamber.
We went through a lot of iterations of that sword switch thing.
So you don't even have to stab these the normal way. You can just, because you meant to obviously like stand in front of them and stab them. If you just walk over them and backstab, you can just instantly destroy them. It saves a few seconds on each one.
Oh, very clever.
Because if if you do this, obviously you're gonna stab it. That's slow. Don't want that. Now I'm gonna manipulate Vor in a way that makes this level very easy for me. Because this level is usually really difficult. I mean, he's all the way over there, so he's being a dick. What is he doing? He's stuck. His AI can get stuck. I want to try and hit him before he... Okay. Now I'm going to quickly run over here as fast as I can. And if I just stand here for this entire level, Bullfrog's just going to stay there. If I stand by this door, he'll stay there. And he'll just keep doing this over and over. So I'll hit him, I'll go back to the door. He's going to come down, he's going to do his little charge, and then I can just go back and hit him again. But obviously I want to not take a lot of damage on him.
Still love those one-on-one cinematics. They're just cool. I know they irritate you because they waste time, but they're just
well,
cool.
Here it can get me killed, because if I get one when he's about to drop,
that's right.
I'm stuck.
Yep.
But right when I know that he's about to come down, I don't attack them, because I know if I get caught in one of those animations, I am fucked. Well, there also is another thing. Bullfrog's health gets to 0, but he doesn't die. You have to hit him again. I always wondered why. Yeah, see, they're bullying me. I'm taking quite a lot of damage. I need to be careful.
I think we wanted a cool, you know, a cool last hit or something. I forget why.
It's just confusing because I never understood why.
Because it looks cool.
It's
so much of the stupid things in this game are just like, yeah, because it kind of looks cool.
It looks cool, so.
You know, the one-on-one kills and the dismemberment. And like, look at it, it's cool. Yes, all this is cool.
I always loved how even if you didn't have the shot, because I've never used the shotgun yet, it's on my back.
It's really shiny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice shotgun. I just don't know where it came from.
Because it's cool.
It's cool, so you put it on his back.
Yeah. Well, if you put it on in front, you can't see it. So
I will say, even though, because the shotgun is slow, because when you shoot it, you have to stand still. But I will say, shooting the shotgun into a big horde of vampires is very satisfying, because they all just explode. That is one thing I do.
So much of the things about this game were just like, Your blade, you're cool. Why do you do things? Because they're cool.
There we go. That's the boss fight.
Yeah.
Which can be pretty hard sometimes. Now we're on the last chapter, which only has 5 levels.
Canyon Hill.
My brain doesn't work apparently. So I'm just gonna. There's a couple of guys with shotguns here that are not nice, and I want to kill them.
Oh, those guys, yeah.
Because they can wipe you out in one shot if you're too.
Yeah,
There's one
nice.
here that can shoot. So now I'm just gonna shoot this little rock. Kill these.
Why do these guys have huge shoulder pads? Because it's cool.
Cool.
There you go.
I've seen the out of bounds in this game more than I've seen the inbounds. Probably. And we just. Where am I? I went. I know where I am because I've played this game so much out of bounds that visually I know where I'm meant to go if I get lost.
It's crazy how you can just navigate stuff from the outside.
You just jump past where the final door would be. And so it's interesting because when I do all sub-objectives, you know, levels like this I have to do the normal way. It's a nice change of pace instead of going out of bounds all the time. Now this level is cruel.
Mountain Base.
There's also a glitch you haven't actually seen yet, which I'm going to use here. So if you, on like some certain ledges, if you like just kind of stand on them, you can just slowly walk backwards, dip into it, and you can out of bounds or walk out of bounds.
How did QA not find that one? Oh, that's
It's like
too
it's
easy.
like the hitbox just kind of flips into whatever you fall into. It's very rare where you can do that though. Not many spots that you can do it. That's the one.
It's like just a millimeter-sized hole in the world. Yep.
I'm just gonna what I'm basically doing now because I can't skip all this level because if you remember this level requires you to blow up those transformers with canisters. But do you remember how I said earlier that I'm gonna do that thing? Wait, where I got confused. I'm gonna do that thing with the canister again. But that's coming up soon because I'm actually not gonna blow up the transform. Well, I'm not gonna blow up both of them. I don't need to.
Right.
Because it's not necessary. Because it's slow.
Weird.
Why am I getting really confused where I am? I wasn't paying attention. Okay, that's fine. Because I was talking, I forgot where I was going. Right. Now I'm in the big power room. Turn on the switch. Because I need that on to get into the room with actual canisters. If I could, because obviously I can get in there, but I can't get out. So I can just get in there out of bounds, but I can't get out once.
More destructible stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to be using that. You're going to be really excited because I'm going to use the destructible stuff in a minute.
Oh.
So kill these guys because they will follow me. I kill these midgets which are amazing. I think this is. I don't know if this is the first level you see them in, or I skip like first time you meet them. Don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna wipe out because I need to. Because I'm gonna be carrying a canister. I don't want any enemies around. I can die, so I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna try get in a position where I can use a UV, but it will kill all the enemies.
Again, notice we reuse the carrying a canister mechanic.
Yeah. Also, it's weird. The canister in that level I did earlier, Acid Rain, on Xbox it's like red, but it's not on PS2. It's like grey. That's another thing. There's a lot of little tiny details not many people would pick up on. So anyway, you see this electric fence? Oh, I wonder what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Put it through the fence.
This part right here that I'm gonna do is gonna use the first instance of airwalking, should I say. If you side jump in a way that you can make the game think you're gonna land on the floor, when you're not, you will actually float in the air.
Oh my god.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand on this after I've destroyed it, which has already been destroyed. I'm going to side jump and I can float in the air here. I'm just going to jump through this wall because it's not solid. From that high up, it's not solid.
Not solid up there. Oh, that's amazing.
And then I need this. It's kind of tricky. I need to line myself up, get through this wall, because if I don't line myself up, I can. Okay, that's fine. I dropped kind of far. That's not what I wanted to. It'll do. As long as I can get back in bounds. Back up the stairs. Also, thank you for making the collision one way. That is very helpful. Back through a wall. And then I can get stun locked here. Do you know about that? Is that an issue you were aware of? Because if you get hit by an enemy in a certain way... Wait, I've got no UV grenades. Oh, I do. The game bugged out. If you get hit in a certain way when you're carrying a canister, you can't drop it, and you're just stuck in an infinite punching loop. You just die. You can't do anything. And that can
I do
happen
remember that. I thought we fixed that, but I guess we didn't.
It's rare, but it can happen. And that's the only spot there where it can happen.
Because it's not.
That level up. Here we've got out of the fire. Where we have to escape. Obviously I'm gonna do some cool shenanigans again.
Mountain base 3.
So I don't want to run around and avoid a load of vampires to finish this level, so I'm just gonna jump on this rail. Jump backwards to oh, I jumped back in. I thought I got. You can get stuck on the top plane there, and I thought I did, so I jumped.
Oh, right.
But yeah, it's weird. If you didn't know this, you actually jump further when you jump backwards. Because when Blade jumps backwards, he takes a step first, like that, and then you can jump further. Very strange. Oh, I did it again. I have to see. The thing is, you can jump through that forward, and it's easier to line up. But it's harder to get through. When you jump forward on this, sometimes you won't get enough. I want to land, and I need to walk forward to follow this walk. I can't see. Yeah, but if I walk forward too far, I'm gonna back in. Here we go. Kind of awkward. I'm just gonna jump over here. And here, and just jump here until I go back up into that.
Yeah, you actually have to make the collision only one way, otherwise you get really bad bugs. Like bugs that you can't... Yeah, you have to know what's inside and what's outside. It's sort of fundamental to a lot of game physics. So, yeah. And I'm sure you've seen this a lot in other speedruns of other games. It's like, yeah, getting back in bounds is pretty easy.
Yeah, but like Uncharted 1, for example, that has one-way collision, but Uncharted 2 and 3 have two-way collision. Like, you know, people change the way they do stuff. I don't know. This level's fun though. Do you remember I told you that there's going to be a glitch that's going to blow your mind?
Yeah.
This level has that, and I to this day I still don't know why it works. It just does. But I'll. Because obviously you're meant to in this level. You're meant to go get Dr. Grant. I was meant to jump down there. I'm getting so carried away talking, I forget what I'm doing. So you're meant to get Dr. Grant, and then bring it to the big transformer thing for it to blow it up, and then then it opens the gate, and you can finish the level. But I'm going to do two glitches in this level. So I'm going to skip even turning the drawbridge right here by doing this glitch again. Clip through this floor, which you can only clip on the turret part because it's a little bit higher than the normal floor. And the turret piece is in my way and it's blocking me. I'm going to just jump up here. And this would be where the drawbridge would take you. And obviously you can turn the drawbridge and get here normally without Dr. Grant.
Yeah.
But this glitch, I was like, oh my god, this is just... I don't know how I didn't find this sooner, because this level is the hardest game, but like in the game. But this is meant to be like, you know, a gate, right? You're meant to just, you know, just that doesn't. No. That's meant to be. If you backwards jump into that, you just go through it. I don't understand why, but it's very useful. And then final level.
This one, yeah. So this is all.
That's really twisted.
Not.
I mean,
there is a little trick I'm gonna do.
Rosie prototyped it, and then obviously the whole team finished it off. But yeah,
Good. I'm gonna do a little trick here. So I'm gonna skip walking around by just jumping up here, and I'm actually gonna wait for the fog because it takes a lot of damage, and I don't really want to take a lot of damage.
plunge your staff into the orifice. There we go. No sexual imagery here, thank you very much.
Here comes Whistler. And now I'm just gonna... Oh, I can boost him, like. Yeah, so it's weird. On NTSC, he attacks them. But on PAL, he doesn't. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna come here.
That's
I'm
definitely
just
not
gonna walk off this
intentional.
ledge. I'm just gonna stand here for the rest of the level. This can happen. This is an issue with NTSC. On PAL, all these enemies will stand still when you do that, and they don't even bother with you. But on NTSC, they still try to get to me. So I need to hope that they don't knock me off when I get on. They can.
Oh, now did we... Oh, I wonder if PAL and NTSC are actually different versions.
Kill him.
If we like have a week or two of bug fixing between the versions, now you've reminded me.
2 more to go.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Maybe that's why some stuff works and doesn't.
I have vague memories that it was something like NTSC, the American version, we didn't have to have all the localization done. And so I think we did that one first. And then I nominally to do the localization, right? But eFigs, the French and the Italian and the Spanish and so on. But along the way, I guess we fixed a couple of bugs or something. And maybe that's why.
Possibly. I do know that when you stand here
One more
on
to go.
PAL, all the enemies will just be standing there, standing still on the platform, just standing there. But on NTSC, they're all underneath me right now, just trying to get to me. Look, probably all underneath my feet. I just can't see them. Yeah, I'm just gonna stand
Right.
here and wait for him to plant the egg, and then go.
I'm just trying to think why the versions would be so different, but that might be why. Because I seem to remember exactly this, and we're like, oh shit, we can't flip this shit. And so it was just a tweak to the last level.
Yeah, but even so, you can still do it as long as they don't knock you off. So it was never really fixed. It's just kind of
Explosive device planted.
there, and it's just a bit harder on it. It's still durable.
Like I say, remember, we are basically a week from this has to go out the door to the printers.
What for
So
this when this level was made? Or
When this level was made, this was the absolute last thing to be made, and yeah, and it's amazing that it works as well as it does. So I remember there were so many bugs with the last level, and we just like, yep, don't have time to fix them, don't care. You mark the bug as will not fix, and just like, nope, don't care.
And there we go.
Don't have time.
yeah, that's the. I finished it
the
in
game.
48 minutes, and I lost about 3 minutes on that one. Yeah, so my PB is 43:24, I believe.
Yeah.
Is my fastest. And yet now you get to see your name come up. Oh, there it is.
do?
Look.
Hey.
Whee.
There's us.
Now you can remember all the names that you were forgetting. All gonna be there.
Yeah. That's right.
But
Okay.
It's
Simon
weird.
was designed. Yeah.
it's weird because this version, it takes forever to skip these credits. On PAL you can just mash through them and they're done, but on this version if you skip it, it takes like 15 seconds to load each section.
Yeah, QA. Darren and Karl, they were the two QA leads, and they just drove them nuts finding all the ways to go out of the map and stuff. So yeah, I hope they see this video and are just like, shaking their head in their hands, just like, oh my god, look at all the stuff we missed. Honestly, most of the time they find stuff and then we just go, yep, don't have time to fix it. Sorry, mate.
Well, I'm glad that not everything was fixed, or there was some little things left in the game, because it makes it like a glitch just run for this is probably going to be like an hour and a half. It saves a lot of time. It skips like half the game.
Yeah.
And especially the escort levels where you have to rely on escorting Dr. Grant, it's not fun because you have to do it slow. There's no way to really speed it up, or she's going to die, or you're going to die.
God, I remember on Urban Chaos Dreamcast, me and Karl would like scream at each other about bugs, because he'd find a bug and it's clearly a bug, and I'd be like, no, I'm not fixing that. I'm not spending my time fixing it. And he's like, you're breaking the game. We gotta fix it. We're both right. We gotta ship the thing. So yeah. You wouldn't like recently on Twitter and stuff, some of that game dev stuff has sort of come out, and people are realizing like, if you find a bug in a game, I guarantee, but almost always the game dev QA, they found that bug too, and it was just they found it late in the process. It wasn't important enough to fix. Like, every game ships with loads of bugs marked as will not fix, and it's not because they didn't find them, it's because it's too hard to repro. It's too hard to repro. It's not a game killer. It's really rare. It's like, it just looks ugly. It doesn't, kill the game. And you're just like, yep, don't care, ship it. Got other, we've got actual game killer bugs that we have to fix instead. So,
would you like to know something interesting?
Yeah, go on.
There is one level that I've never been able to get out of bounds in, and it is the training. I cannot get out of the map. I've tried really hard just to see what's out of the map, and I can't get out. I just thought you might find that interesting. That and like the Vorpal boss, but the Vorpal boss doesn't really count because it's a boss fight. I don't really need to get out. And the thing is, in Whistler, in the train, you can see stuff through the windows, the stuff out of the bounds. I'd like, it'd be nice to go out there and see what it is, but you just can't. I've tried.
Yeah, it's just a weird, like, it's not intentional. It's just how the individual assets were made, because these maps are made by the artists. Make little sections of tunnel, right? It's kind of obvious where the sections are, and then you bolt the sections together. And like some places, as you said, the collision just isn't there. So if you get high enough, you get over the collision volume. But in other places, you're slipping between two props, right? We call them props. So two sections of tunnel that we just put near each other, and sometimes they're not actually properly joined up, so there's a tiny little gap that you can jump through if you get it right. And so some of those things, that's because the door and the wall, there is a tiny gap through there that if you get it just right, you can slip through. And that's also, I think, where some of the differences between Xbox and PS2 come in, because the two do maths very slightly differently, and that difference usually isn't visible. But if you're finding, if you're deliberately trying to find that tiny sliver where you can slip through, the maths difference matters. So
it's very good to get like an insight from you about certain stuff, how it works. The training level thing didn't even catch on to me about the jump mechanic until you mentioned it. But when you were talking about it, I was like, oh my god,
it is
this tutorial that's telling you to jump, you never have to use it.
And that is absolutely my favorite, like, real life game development story of how, we just kept taking them out. And then it was literally like 2 weeks before we had to ship that we realized, like, oh shit, that's the only place we have a jumping puzzle left, is in the tutorial where it teaches you how to do a jumping puzzle.
It's just
like, oh, fuck. Yeah, and it's like, well, we're not changing the tutorial now. Ship it. It's fine. It's just
Well, it just shows that obviously the tutorial must have been made very early on.
yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah, and then
I mean,
did you like when they were developed? Did it go through in like the actual like order of which you play the game, or was like levels developed jumbled up?
no, it was all over the place. And I think like the tutorial was one of the earliest things because in one small map, it's got all the game mechanics, right? So
Right.
it's a really good place to test stuff, right? Did you break the jumping? Well, you play the tutorial. No, the jumping works fine. Did you break, this mechanic, shooting things, the tutorial level, you do one of everything. So I think that I remember that being done very early, and people would constantly test that, right? Oh, I tweaked how the gun worked. Okay, so you play the tutorial to make sure that you haven't broken the gun and things like
Yeah.
that. So
I do love the
everybody in the
boxing.
company is constantly playing the tutorial. So that level works.
Apart from it saying that you can jump to do puzzles.
Well,
I do love that there's a punching bag in the tutorial. Yeah.
And then yeah, the final level was by far the last one to be done. But normally, no, all the others are just in sort of random orders. You plot that out very early on, and so what are the key levels going to be, and so you sort of focus on those, and then you got to change them and stuff. So yeah, no, it's all. It happens that the tutorial was done very early on, and the last level was done very late on, but that was just sort of pretty random.
So I assume that you were from developing this game from the get-go. I do remember you confirming that you were there from the start.
Of Blade, yes.
Yeah. See, it's nice to get an insight from someone who was there through the entire thing, because I've always had this idea in my head of, because I always wanted to know who worked on it. Some things that could have happened, reading about what happened to the company and seeing the old Muckyfoot website on the archive is pretty cool to read that stuff, and then to actually be able to reach out to someone to do this for a game that probably no one cares about other than me is pretty cool. And I appreciate you doing it and talking about the game and the development, and then watching me do the run and reacting. It's fun.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to look back on that. It was just a year and a bit, Blade itself, but it was pretty influential for me because it's the first time I played with a whole bunch of sort of advanced graphics concepts. StarTopia had a couple of little graphics touches, but mainly it was the focus was make the graphics work to support the gameplay. It wasn't trying to be visually sort of clever. Whereas Blade 2, we actually, we knew it had to be a showy game, right? The visuals were important. It had to be showy. It had to be cool. We had to have cool things like the vampires dissolving and big flames everywhere and stuff that just wasn't as much a priority in StarTopia because you're meant to be focusing on the gameplay of StarTopia. Blade, we were like, it's a film tie-in, don't try and get too fancy with the gameplay. But it had to be visually
it works. So.
Right. But it visually had to be kind of spectacular. So we worked a lot of graphics tricks on that were gambles, but they worked. And it was kind of neat. And again, I got to do those because the Xbox version was much simpler to do. So while the other four were struggling like hell to make the PS2 work, me and Rosie got to play a bit on the Xbox and do some clever stuff. And so that was really fun for me personally. Didn't help anybody else in the company, but yeah. So I do remember it as personally a good time in my life where I took on some really good technical challenges, and we made them work. And then, and it was really interesting working with Rosie and seeing him literally grow up from a QA guy to like one of the best developers in the world, honestly. At the end of Blade 2, he could do anything. And that was really amazing, that transformation.
It's pretty
and
crazy.
then just learning. I'd never done a film. I don't think the company had done a film tie-in before. So all the madness that happens when you've got like 5 other different companies telling you what you can and can't do in your own game, because like, oh no, Blade would never do that, or oh, Blade doesn't look like that, or it's like, oh come on guys, just let us do the work. It's like, no, we can't have that in Blade or whatever.
Yeah.
That was like, and relative, and apparently, even then, like the film guys were relatively hands off. They didn't do too many annoying things, whereas I've heard absolute nightmares from other people doing film tie-ins where the film script guys want really control over the actual dialogue and the lines of stuff, and like, oh no, he would never say it that way, and you're like, oh, but you're a film script guy. This is a game. It's different. And trying to explain that difference, and they go, no, I know all about films. And it's like, fine. So that aspect was very interesting, seeing with Blade, but it wasn't, aside from the goofy thing about no, he can't look like Wesley Snipes, they were relatively hands off, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Well,
and as I
feel
say, like
yeah,
actually, so this has been good for me, because seeing you play it and seeing how like you're not, like you haven't burned the CD, like, well, that's good. It can't have been that bad. The gameplay side of things, I just remember that we had so many things we would have liked to have done and just did not have time. And poor old Simon and Diskey would have loved to have done more with it, and we just didn't have time. And so that's mainly my recollection of it, is like, the things we could have done with it. But actually, like, for what it is, it's fine. It's a good, decent film tie-in. So
I just can't believe like the amount of bad stuff people say about the game, because it's not bad by any means. It's not the best game in the world, but it's fun. It has a really good soundtrack, and the gameplay is fun. Just running around shooting people, beating them up. When you're a kid like I was, you don't really care about stuff like that. You just want to play a game, punch things, and do that, and that's why I enjoyed it. And when I was younger, I loved the character of Blade, so for me, it was a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously we read all the reviews at the time, and things like, why can't you use the sword all the time? And again, it's like, dude, how long have you been a game reviewer? I forget who it was. It was someone was talking about, I forget which game, and they said, hey, you know what would be cooler? If this game had a jetpack. If you had a jetpack and you could just like fly over the levels, wouldn't that be cool? And then they're like, so you load the level, you strap on the jetpack, you fly to the end, and that's the end of the level. How is that cooler?
That's basically
That's
what
not
I
cool.
do. I just do it.
Why is that interesting? Yeah, right, exactly. You put in the game a thing that you've just been doing. That's not, I mean, it's cool when you like cheat it because it's out of bounds, but it doesn't make for interesting gameplay. So, that's the same thing with a sword. Like, why can't I use a sword all the time? Because you just murder everyone and there's no game.
Yeah.
So it's fun to just run around and punch vampires and do the cool, one-on-ones and all that sort of stuff. It's just, it's a kind of cool game. It's not particularly deep. It's just, it's fun to punch things.
Yeah, I feel like people looked way too much into it. Reading the reviews just hurts my brain with the stuff that they do say about certain aspects of the game, because I don't see a problem. I mean, it has issues. Every game does, but it's a good game, and I'm very glad that you helped work on it and that it exists, because it gave me something to do. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's fun seeing it through someone else's eyes, and
Especially after all these years.
yeah, and it does live up to the film, right? Are you going to criticize the film because it doesn't say much about the human condition? No, it's Blade. He kills vampires, and he's cool doing it.
Yeah, no one knows
That's
about
all.
the film for that.
What more do you want out of a film, called Blade with Wesley Snipes in it?
I think people
same
were
with the game.
expecting like Oscar-worthy, story.
Don't think so.
But that's not what they got.
No. Obviously, the game for legal reasons does not have Wesley Snipes in it. That still cracks me
you
up
could
every
have fooled
time.
me. I didn't even realise that it wasn't meant to be the likeness of Wesley Snipes. So it looks similar, but it's not. I never really put two and two together.
it's just such a goofy. That blew our minds when the publisher said, "Oh yeah, no, you can't use Wesley Snipes." What? We're doing Blade.
Can't do Blade without Wesley Snipes. It's impossible.
Well, we did the impossible, so did you. You just speedran it in 48 minutes, which is also impossible.
I'm a version of Blade that can just walk through walls.
There you go.
But it's actually really interesting because
the day walker, you're the wall walker. There you go.
Yeah, it's really interesting though because Mike, actually, when I did speak to him way back when, he also mentioned that he said that he noticed that I'd been speedrunning the Saboteur. Have you heard of that? It's the game by Pandemic, the one where you're in Paris and the Nazis have taken over, like GTA.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. Well, he said that he'd noticed I'd been speedrunning, and he said that he briefly worked on that too. So it's a cool scope of things to see that he worked on two games that I speedran, and obviously he had a bigger part in this than Saboteur, but he still worked on it for a time, and it's cool to see that everyone's human. Everyone who worked on this is just a normal person, like yourself. Me, who's playing it and breaking it, is also just a normal person, but a normal person that aspires to break things. I like glitching games. It's one of my main hobbies. Like, I have a run in the Guinness Book of World Records. Not that I'm not trying to brag or anything. It titles me as a glitch hunter, and I still feel like that is, where it is for me, because that's what I am. At the end of the day, I enjoy sitting there, pumping walls for hours and hours and hours on end, way more than I do actually running the game itself. I love finding the stuff more than I do doing the speedruns.
Walls ain't going to hunt themselves. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, as a kid, that's how I became a developer, right? As a kid, I'm physically taking stuff apart and occasionally putting it back together again. Sorry, Mum and Dad, I destroyed a couple of gadgets. And then when I got my first computer, a ZX Spectrum in 82 or 83, I think it was, and I'd take those games apart. And I remember the first game I ever hacked into and changed the graphics, and it was a game called Orbiter, and it was a clone of Defender, and it was a game called Orbiter. And I realized, like, oh shit, I can actually change the game, and that's how I went from a player of games to a developer of games. And then I realized, I can write the stuff from myself from scratch, and I got into it, and then Elite by Braben and Bell. That's how I got into 3D graphics, and then I still play Elite. Like, how cool is that Elite is still around, all these years later. Yeah. Done by David Braben. And in fact, Braben helped me set up my first game company. Thank you, sir. Much obliged.
You did say on your bio thing that you have started a couple of game companies that nobody would know, but you never mentioned what they were. I started intriguing.
Just coming out of university, I knew someday I would want to start my own game company, because everyone wants to do that. So I knew I'd want to do that at some point. And I just left university, and I had the lady who's now my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, and she had a proper job, so she was making money, and but didn't have any other, didn't have any kids and didn't have any, no financial burdens. So I was like, well, why don't I do it now? So I started this game company with me and a mate from college, Jim Cameron, not the film director. And we ran this little 2-person coding studio doing various prototypes and games. And so I ran the company, and he coded and I coded. And we did that for 2 years. And after 2 years, I realized that I really, really, really hated it. I hated it so much. I hated running a company. I wanted to be a coder. I wanted to make stuff. And running the company, even with 2 people, took so much of the time, and it was so stressful. And we did in 2 years, we did 6 different projects that would start and get cancelled and start and get cancelled. And you'd constantly be running around and chasing people for money. And so I said, oh, screw this. And I folded the company and I went and got a proper job for someone else. And so I got that out of my system. I got that out of my system, and I did want to start a games company, and now I know, no, I don't. so I've never started my own company. Never had that ambition again because I got it out of my system, and I did it when there wasn't much to lose.
It's annoying having ideas for games or stuff like that when you don't have the means to create the stuff yourself, because I've had some ideas. I had an idea of it's kind of like something to do with Blade, but not exactly. I mean, it might be a simple concept, but it was like a 2D side scroller where you play as a guy that's somewhat similar to Blade, but he gets bitten and turns, and then basically you go through a boss rush to get to this person that bit you and turned you, and then you fight them. You can have ideas to make something, but then actually trying to make it is a completely different story. And I have tried to do it, but I'm not good at that. And I'm good at breaking stuff. I'm not good at making stuff. So
yeah, I mean, the problem is that the number of people in this world who can come up with an idea for a game and then actually get to make that game is very, very small. Now, it's actually growing recently because we've got some really good tools, Unreal and Unity, that are engines that, where a one-man developer is actually a practical thing. And people can actually come up with a game design, a simple one, and actually make it and ship it. And that's really cool. But, it's going to be a very simple game. But in general, like in the whole of Muckyfoot, right? What do we have? 35, 40 people, I think, on Blade. How many people at Muckyfoot were able to come up with an idea and do that idea? And it's basically 3 people, right? It's Simon Keating, the designer. It's Mike Diskett, because it was his, he was the lead. And Mike, and that was mainly the gameplay, was Mike.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of artists, and they can obviously say, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do this thing? And, but they don't, control the whole game or anything, right? It's Simon's job. And then, and then there's weird ones like Mark Rose, who was like, hey, why don't we do this for the final level? And everyone goes, oh, thank fuck, someone's come up with an idea because we haven't got any. But yeah, out of 35 people, maybe 3 people have, that sort of like, I can design a game. And the rest of us kind of do what we're told. And that's honestly fine. As a graphics focused person, I focus on I get to invent loads of stuff, but it's all, how do we render the graphics, right? I have no art skills. I have no sound skills. So we all have, so everyone has creativity in their own little domain, right? Martin Oliver can do whatever music he likes that he thinks is appropriate, and that's great. But the number of people who can actually design a game from scratch and have it produced, very, very few people in the world that get that role. And
Yeah.
generally, when they're doing it, they're not having fun because it's incredibly stressful. Or in the case of Blade, like, hey, I know you want to do this, but you can't because that's not in the film, or whatever. So Blade, Simon was very constrained about what he could do, because he can't make Super Mario, he has to make Blade. So it's not as cool being a game designer as you'd think, and it's a very hard job to get into.
I can imagine.
And so, but it's it's if you're outside the industry, it's the thing everyone wants to do. Oh, I've got this idea for a game, and it's like, yeah, that's great, mate. That's got this idea for a painting. Oh, you should go and paint it. Oh, I'm not a good painter. Well, ain't nobody else gonna paint it. So,
I mean, that's pretty much a good way to put it. Like, I've tried to make stuff, but I took a course of a Unity course for 2D development and learning C#, and it just got to a point where I had no fucking clue what was going on. Even though I felt like I did, I was learning it, but then when I had to put it into practice, I'd forget what to do, and I just gave up. But doing that on my own, I did want the idea of doing this course and making this game that I wanted to make. But it's easier said than done, and it's one of those things where you have to be very, very patient, and I am not patient at all.
Yeah, I remember we would have, school kids come in for work experience at Muckyfoot, during the summer holidays. And they'd usually come in, and it was cool. We'd bring them in and we'd show them how, game dev works, and they'd talk to everybody and see, how this, group of people make this game together and who does what and stuff. It was cool. And then the ones who were keen on programming, they'd give them to me because I was happy to, show them things. And so, as well as learning about how, the game we're making, I'd give them a task and I'd say, okay, why don't you do a very, very simple game and learn the full process from start to end? And so I'd say, okay, so Pac-Man. And they go, yeah, sure, I know Pac-Man. Okay, just copy Pac-Man. Just copy it. Don't do anything new or inventive or something. Just copy it. And they're like, oh, well, I'm here for 4 weeks. What do I do for the other 3 weeks? And I'm like, mate, we will get to that when we get to that. Just sit down. We give them a framework to get basic sprites on the screen and stuff like that. And we can very little game thing. We do these game jams. So we had this thing ready made. So you can sort of plug simple games into it. And I'd sit them down and say, just make Pac-Man. And then we can discuss like how you did it. What method did you use for the ghosts to move around, and what did you use for the scoring and things like that. Nobody ever finished. Nobody ever came close to finishing Pac-Man, because Pac-Man takes way, way longer than you think. Even when you know exactly what you're doing, you are making a clone of Pac-Man. Not even an exact clone, but you're not doing any. You think like, oh, there's nothing to invent. I know what I'm doing. But it turns out, no, you are inventing every little detail. And so nobody ever finished. And so I think that was, hopefully they learned the valuable lesson that everything in game development is very, very hard. And it just takes, patience.
Well, I could still go back to that course and try and continue, but I'd have to start again. But the thing, it's one of those things where, how I have the patience to, like, okay, over the years, I'm going to use Blade 2 as an example, but some other games too. So, you know Dead Space 3, or have you heard of Dead Space in general?
Dead Space the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I played it. Yeah.
Well, in Dead Space 3, there is a specific level towards the end of the game, chapter 14, where you basically have to go around in a circle around this like base and collect stuff, put it into a puzzle, finish the level, and you can go to the next one. And for years, we knew that there was a checkpoint right on the other side of this door that would skip the entirety of that. It would have like 15 minutes. And in co-op, you could clip each other through stuff and it was easy to do in co-op. But there was never, ever a way to do it in solo. And the thing is, with something like that, you try and try and try. Maybe once a month, you go in, you'd mess around that area, see if you can find something. But with something like that, I would never give up. And there's only been a few instances where there's been a thing that has theoretically been proven to be possible that I've never found. Like that acid rain door skip you saw me do where I popped through the door and landed on the other side. That was a theory that I've had for so long to get through that door, but I've never been able to do it. And then I found it. It was out of sheer luck because I was messing around on the Xbox version and I just managed to jump at the perfect point to where it clipped me through and I was like, holy shit. But with this thing in Dead Space 3, I realised that if you binded the crouch to the mouse wheel, you could roll that and you could clip through the tiny gap in the elevators. Then you could call it, ride the elevator up, clip through the top, go out of bounds and jump into the checkpoint. And that saved 15 minutes just from trying one thing. And it's just, I have persistence and patience when it comes to messing around like that. But when it comes to learning something, it's different.
And it's both, right? Game dev is, you have to have that persistence to try, because the first time you write any bit of code, it doesn't work. It's like that. There's this thing where, there's a programmer joke where you type for, you type your code and you write code for half an hour. And then you hit compile and it compiles first time. And then you hit run and it runs correctly first time. And that's spooky because that never happens. And so you're like, am I in a movie or something? Or like there's a bug. There's got to be a bug. I got to find the bug. Like, you get it's like that thing of like, what have I forgotten? When you go on holiday, what have I forgotten to bring? There's something you've forgotten to bring, and it's not. You feel uneasy until you figure out, I forgot my toothpaste. Oh, thank God. Okay, now I know what I forgot to bring on holiday. I can relax because it's just the toothpaste. I can buy some more toothpaste.
Yeah.
Writing code is the same. Like, where's the bug? There's got to be a bug. There's always a bug. I haven't found the bug yet. That means it's going to be a bastard of a bug. Whereas if you find like 5 bugs, you go, oh, there you go. I fixed all the bugs. It's great. Yeah, happy. And game dev does take that patience, but yeah, it also takes the learning, and that's why I find it fascinating, because a whole bunch of game dev needs knowledge that exists, that is conventional knowledge. It needs a whole bunch of knowledge that is unique to game dev, that you can't really explain why you do it this way. It's just, if you do it the other way, it's not good. It's it's a bug farm, or it doesn't work for this other reason. And so there's a lot of institutional knowledge about game dev specific to game dev, and then there's just like throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks. Why is this good? Don't know, just worked. Shut up, ship it. And that's what I find fascinating about game dev. Whereas like my current job, I work at Intel building graphics cards, and there's some of that, but there's very little like, I don't know, try this, see if it works. Like, you don't tend to do that because why? I don't know. Games is particular about that, partly because in games, like, hey, if it looks good, it is good. There's no spec for a game. An accounting system, no, there's a spec, and you've got to meet the spec. A game, if it looks good, it is good. So
yeah,
I like that blend of, obviously as a graphics coder, like, you got to get the art that the artist did. You got to put that on the screen pretty faithfully. But other things, you have that flexibility. I love that blend of creativity and no, it's got to actually work. The game must not crash too much.
Have you ever thought about like even remotely just briefly going back into doing game development in some form, whether it be like on the side or?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I write games on the side all the time. Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I have a game that I've been writing on and off for like 15 years or something. Because
Maybe as
yeah,
long as
I
Blade 2.
well, not long after that, because I moved to the States and then I did Rad and then I worked for Intel. And Intel, I didn't have that same outlet as games coding gave me. And so, yeah, you write your own games, not intending to ever ship them, just because I wanted something to write. So I do it because I enjoy writing it.
Well, one day,
and sure,
maybe it can actually be a game that people can play.
oh God, no. Then I'd have to ship it. That'd be terrible.
You could just release it
I
for
could-
free.
I'd have to find all the bugs. Oof.
Get me to test it for
No,
you.
thank-
I'll find them all.
No, I don't want you to find them. Then I have to fix them.
That's a good point, actually. We'll just sell it then. Just tell everyone they can have it.
I'm cheating the 90/90 rule. So the 90/90 rule is a rule of certainly, or it's a rule of everything, but it's particularly true for game dev. So the 90/90 rule is the first 90% of the development takes the first 90% of your budgeted time and effort. Fairly obvious. And then the last 10% of the development effort takes another 90% of your budgeted time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, now you've missed your slip date. So yep, that's why games are late, because of the 90/90 rule. The last 10% is like, oh damn it, we've done the game. It's fun to play. There's just a few little bugs to fix. 3 years later, okay, now we can ship it. I'm sick of this bloody thing. Get it out the door.
I wonder if there's ever been a game that doesn't have a single bug. Nope. Resident Evil Dead Aim, I have never found a single glitch in that at all. I've never found a single bug, issue, nothing.
That just means they could have shipped it 6 months earlier. That's what that means. They could have shipped it earlier and started a new game earlier and spent less money on the development.
That's good point.
I mean, you intentionally ship with bugs because why fix them if almost nobody finds them, if they're really obscure, if they don't ruin the game for people, it doesn't matter. It's not worth your effort, right?
And it makes it fun for me because I can just go out the map and skip everything.
There you go. It's a positive thing to ship early.
But, it annoys me when some developers will see that someone has found a glitch that allows them to do a cool speedrun, and then they go and patch it. This is why I don't really like the modern era where they can just fix the game and it's gone. Because, when you ship a game like this, like Blade 2, you can't go back and fix it because it's done.
Yeah, that's right.
You could re-release the game and sell it again as a different version. That's just more money. It's like GTA San Andreas. Obviously, the earlier versions that came out have that hot coffee thing in them. And then they had to patch it out in a later version and sell that. And obviously, if you get one of those early versions with the hot coffee, and then nice. It's like Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. That game was about to come out when 9/11 happened. And the final level of that game took place on top of the Twin Towers. They had to cut that. Yeah. But some of the copies got, released early. And there is copies of that version with the Twin Towers at the end out there. And it is worth a lot of money if you can find one. You could just buy a random copy. The only way you would know if it is a version is to obviously go into the game and play that level and see if it is, because it's got a different name. But if someone has no idea what they're looking at, they would have no idea how much money that's worth. Yeah.
So I agree. The ease of patching a game, I mean, for a developer, it's fantastic. What it actually means is you can release the game even earlier than you originally would have been able to, because you can patch it. And we always talk about day zero patches, and they're kind of an evil thing, but they're kind of a required thing, because again, if you just delayed the game by 3 months, then but you've wasted 3 months. You could be, so it's a necessary evil, and it is honestly the act of shipping a game used to be so stressful because, especially on the consoles, because you'd have to burn the thing to a special CD and then put the thing in the dev kit, and that'd be fine. And then you'd have to get a proper official disc done, and they'd test it on a real non-developer kit, and maybe it'd work and maybe it wouldn't, and then they'd test the TRCs, and you'd literally be sitting in the office, just sitting there, not doing anything, waiting for Sony or Microsoft to test the game and come back with a problem. And meanwhile, like, you're kind of tinkering around in prototypes and stuff, but you're not really working, because you have got to be there ready for when, if they report a bug, you have to fix that bug immediately. Immensely stressful time, that last few weeks of you've officially shipped the game, but you're just waiting for it to fall out of certification with a fatal bug, and then you really have to scramble. I've done that, and it's horrible, and no one ever wants to do that again. And it's very fortunate they don't have to do it again, because we don't ship on physical rotating CDs anymore, or at least it's not the first ship. So
most games just get released digitally now, and most games nowadays, the disc is literally just an install and
that's
an
right.
activation. You don't really play the game off the discs anymore. So, but I've always been an advocate for this. I like owning the game physically. I don't like digital games, and also physical games. They're easier to down patch and get rid of the patches if you don't want the bugs to be fixed. There's instances where games fix stuff and then you can go back and then they're not fixed.
There's a bunch of good things about it. And the other thing is, once you've shipped a game, once it's sitting on the shelf in a disc, it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You can move on to the next thing. It's done. Yeah. Whereas now, there's always the DLC, there's the day zero patch, the DLC, the, other things. You sort of think about it afterwards. I don't know. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. So then there's stuff like, I can't actually play Blade 2 right now because I don't have an Xbox and I don't have a PS2. It would be quite a lot. That's true. That might work.
We should make a deal. You should do a speed run and get on the leaderboard. Hell yeah.
No. I'm actually not not that great at those sort of games.
Well, it's
more a strategy person.
Yeah. Well, it's been very fun. I had like 2 hours sleep last night and I'm very tired, so I could sit here talking to you for hours, but
super late. Yes.
Yeah. So we probably end it there. But yeah, thank you for coming on and talking to me about literally everything, which is great, and obviously watching me do the run and seeing your reaction is perfect. It's humbling to me to see someone's reaction who worked on it to see the stuff that I've found. So I really do appreciate that.
It's been a good remembrance of a mixed time. Professionally, a very good time, and creatively, very frustrating. But and it's great to see it through someone's eyes. And boy, you have played this game more than probably anyone in the world, I would suspect.
Probably at this point.
So the fact that you're still playing it, that is kind of cool. That's cool.
I still got to do all sub objectives because I did a run and I missed one of the objectives in a level, so I got to redo it. But once I'm done with that, I'm gonna take a little break from it. But I've got to do that, so I still got some more Blade 2 to do. But
good. I hope you still enjoy it. Yeah, don't play it too much. But
yeah, I don't want to. I wish I could watch the cutscenes again. That'd be fun. I haven't watched the cutscenes in this game in like 15 years.
They were such a pain in the ass to get working. The cutscenes,
because they're all in game.
They're all in game, and like the things would load wrong, and so the camera would change to another thing, and half the things aren't loaded, and